Ladies and gentlemen, got a hell of a show for you today, but before we get into that, please join me as we discuss briefly the brands that make this podcast possible. This episode is brought to you by Babbel, and perhaps you have travel abroad planned for this year or this summer, and you need to learn a language for your destination. You can do so with Babbel, the #1 selling language learning app. From ordering in restaurants or asking for directions or just to gain a deeper understanding of the culture, Babbel makes the whole process of learning a new language addictively fun and extremely easy. Bite-sized lessons you can actually use in the real world. Babbel is a can't-miss travel essential. A lot of things I like about this. My favorite, though, is short 15-minute lessons that make it a perfect way to learn a new language on the go. Unlike the language classes we likely all took in high school, Babbel is designing their courses with practical, real-world conversations in mind, stuff you need for everyday life. Many other language learning apps use AI for their lesson plans, but not Babbel. Theirs were created by over 100 language experts. The teaching method has been scientifically proven to be effective. With Babbel, you have a choice of 14 different languages: Spanish, French, Italian, German, and many more. Babbel's speech recognition technology helps you improve your pronunciation and accent, and there are so many ways to learn with Babbel. In addition to lessons, you can access podcasts, games, videos, stories, and even like live classes. Personally, my preference is to do this while in the car. I'm not going to say it's mindless, but it allows me to get where I need to go and brush up on my Spanish a little bit. Right now, when you purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription, you'll get an additional 3 months for free. That is 6 total months for the price of 3. Just go to Babbel.com and use the promo code ClearedHot. That's BABBEL.com, code ClearedHot for an extra 3 months free. This episode is also brought to you by 10,000, the makers of the highest quality, best fitting, and most comfortable training shorts that I have ever worn in my entire life. I wish I got issued these things when I was in the military. Whether you're into training, lounging, or everything in between, let me just tell you, these things are awesome. Right now, my favorite, the 7-inch tactical short. Now, let me just tell you, I'm not doing anything tactical in these shorts, but I love them. They're the ultimate combination of durability, mobility, and versatility. It was developed and tested with over 50 Special Ops members who put it to the test by rucking, swimming, lifting, and just about everything in between. We're talking EOD, Raiders, Army Green Berets, Army Rangers, Army Air Force Special Operations, and unfortunately Navy SEALs, which actually might be a reason not to buy it. They're chock full of features to stand up to your toughest sessions. The tactical short was created to withstand the demanding and ever-changing requirements of military fitness. Ultralight ripstop fabric, tough as nails waistband, permanent anti-odor treatment, no bounce pocket, medium compression anti-chafe liner, side slits, and 4-way stretch for maximum range of motion. I highly recommend their lightweight and durable shirt as well. Like I said, from rucking to Olympic lifting to obstacle course training, these tactical shorts, they stand up to the challenge, and they are just incredibly comfortable. The first thing I put on when I get home. 10,000 is a direct-to-consumer company, so no middleman. You're going to get premium fabrics, trims, and techniques that other brands simply cannot afford. They have a collaborative product development. A team of over 200 athletes is out there testing their stuff. Over 9,500 5-star reviews and free shipping and returns and a lifetime guarantee. 10,000 is offering the listeners 15% off your first purchase. Go to 10,000.cc and enter the code ClearedHot to receive 15% off of your purchase. That is 10,000.cc and enter the code ClearedHot. This episode is also brought to you by Grammarly. If you use electronic devices to communicate, listen to me right now, you need to get on board with Grammarly. If you're like me, double checking turns into triple checking, or it even sometimes leads to starting all over again. I get confused sometimes with the tense, the spelling, you name it. And I don't like to have doubt when I'm going to send an email or a message or a project, and I will take all the help that I can get. I use Grammarly every single day, specifically attached to my email software. It provides for me real-time clarity suggestions. So as I'm typing, if there's something where I could do better, perhaps the tense is wrong, it underlines it for me and I can go right back and correct my error as I am working through the project. It has vocabulary suggestions, and let me just tell you, I need those all the time. If you're a fan of synonyms or you're looking for them, Grammarly Premium is going to offer suggestions to replace overused words and phrases. And probably my favorite part of this, the tone check, which allows you to determine how the reader could perceive what you're saying, but it goes beyond that. There's a plagiarism check, like I said, a vocab suggestion, overall writing score, clarity checks. It's a great integration to any type of writing that you have to do. Like I said, I use it on every single email that I send. There's a free version of Grammarly, and it's going to help you with your basic spelling, grammar, and punctuation mistake. And then there's Grammarly Premium, a feature-packed edition. That is going to help streamline your workload with integration into Microsoft Office or your internet browser, your phone, and more. And you don't have to worry about a thesaurus tab or, research, because there's going to be vocabulary suggestions, and you can get straight to the point with those clarity suggestions that are going to eliminate unnecessary or redundant words and phrases. I am not joking. I use this every single day, and it has helped my written communication. If you're interested in cutting down on editing time and writing more confidently with Grammarly Premium, you can get 20% off Grammarly Premium right now by signing up at grammarly.com/clearedhot. That's 20% off at grammarly.com/clearedhot. Lastly, this episode is brought to you by Magic Spoon, the only cereal that I'm aware of on the face of the planet that'll actually change your life for the better. I have loved cereal my entire life, but as I age, I don't really like what's in the cereal. This is my number one go-to snack food. It's in the pantry. It's actually on the counter. It's in my car, and I've actually found it sometimes in my gym bag. It didn't get there by accident, of course. I put it there. Why do I love this stuff so much? And actually, I've gotten message after message after message from friends saying that they love it as well. Why do you love it? One, it's ridiculously delicious. But with that, 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carb in each serving. 140 grams per serving, and it's keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low-carb, and GMO-free, but doesn't taste like cardboard. You can also build your own box or get a variety pack with available flavors like cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, blueberry, and cinnamon. My recommendation, build your own box and then play around with combinations. You can even go 2 or 3 types of combinations depending on what kind of game you're bringing. Go to magicspoon.com/clearedhot to grab your delicious cereal and try it today. And be sure to use the promo code clearedhot at checkout to save $5 off your order. Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, you can get your next delicious bowl of guilt-free cereal at magicspoon.com/clearedhot and use the code clearedhot to save $5 off. That's it. Let's talk about my guest today. God damn, this episode was amazing. I was linked up with Mr. John Stryker Meyer through Jocko. Actually, I'll take a step back. I was introduced to him by listening to him on the Jocko podcast. I couldn't believe it when we started directly communicating, and then he agreed to come up and record an episode. Now, he was a Green Beret, specifically a Green Beret that served in the MACV-SOG in the Vietnam era, which I know very little about, but I know another Green Beret. I know quite a few Green Berets, actually, but this one, Mike Glover, a repeat guest on the podcast, phenomenal human being, is more of what I would say is the modern era of Green Beret. And I could think of nothing better than getting somebody from the Vietnam era and somebody from the global war on terrorism era, getting them together and talking about whatever we want to. And that is what episode number 188 is all about. Let's get into it. Cleared Hot, episode 188 with John Stryker Meyer, also known as Tilt, and Mike Glover. Enjoy.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north to south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
They gave me a commission at the 12-year mark, if you can believe that. That's how I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that the military advancement system was completely broken.
Did Jocko get a commission too?
Yeah, but he got, well, I guess both of the commissions were real. He got an education before his commission.
Oh, okay.
He went to college, and I think the Navy paid for his.
But was he a SEAL before?
He was.
Oh, wow.
He was an enlisted SEAL before. I think he started off as a comm guy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's an old school dude. Kind of old, like 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We're talking full Oakley Blades era team guy.
Wow.
Yeah. And then that's before Ramadi.
Yeah, oh yeah. This is before 2000. The tightest of the tight shorts.
Is this Charlie Sheen era-ish?
He was post Charlie Sheen.
Yeah.
But
because Ramadi was 2006. That's where
that was 06.
Oh,
but he came in, Jocko came into, I'd have to say the 90s. He came into the military.
Okay. Oh, okay.
That would be my guess.
Early 90s.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That would be my guess.
Yeah.
Where the hell do we even begin?
Well, this coin is amazing.
It is.
Thank you so much for that, John.
It's my honor.
Tilt is your call sign, right?
Yeah, that's my nickname.
Tilt. That's so awesome.
Goes back to pinballs.
Yeah, rattling pinball machines when you are not appreciative of the result.
Well, you see, when you guys lose, you walk away pissed. When I lose, I shake the shit out and see my name in neon, and then I walk away.
Fair.
Indeed.
The best way I think to describe that coin, Mike, you let me know, is if you could, John, perhaps give us a history of MACV-SOG, where it actually comes from and what it was.
Sure. We can give the quick thumbnail sketch to get in.
Yeah.
Our government, in its infinite wisdom in the early days of the Southeast Asia conflict in Vietnam, it entered into a treaty or a pact, an accord of some kind, because after Dien Bien Phu fell in 1954, the communists were still moving people south because South Vietnam was independent, corrupt issues, of course, but anyways, that was our future ally. So our government entered an agreement that we would withdraw all of our combat troops from Cambodia and Laos. And the North Vietnamese, the communists being the honorable scumbags that they are, had all agreed publicly on it. And of course, by that time, they had been coming down the Ho Chi Minh Trail for several years, bringing down the trail, expanding it, because they knew that things were moving forward and that our presence was continuing to support South Vietnam. They continued to influence anything they could to work against the sitting government, because, the communists will do anything to take it over. So in 1964, by that time, our government withdrew the troops. Our Operation White Star, our Green Berets that were in Laos, were all withdrawn. And
were they there publicly at that time? This was I don't want to say, I guess it would be an unclassified operation. Like everybody knew they were there.
Yeah, they knew they were there, but there was they didn't talk about it much. This is under Eisenhower before Kennedy gets in. Then under Kennedy, they withdraw because Kennedy and his administration believed whatever they thought. But anyways, the bottom line was, by 1964, they said we need to have cross-border operations. And of course, the communists in our State Department tied our hands in the very beginning. And for across-the-border missions into Cambodia, they said you can only go with 5 men. You can't carry American weapons. And even in Cambodia, as late as 1968, we still had no attack air. The majority of times it was just helicopter gunships. That's Cambodia. So 64, the secret war kicks off. It ends in 72. It's an 8-year secret war. Had Chief SOG, who was the overseer of it, always worked with the Air Force to get our assets in. And so by the time I arrived in 68, the war had been going on for 4 years. And by that time, they were developing SOG hunter-killer teams that were designed and trained to, when we were on the ground in Laos or Cambodia, their job was to find us and kill us. And just to kill the Americans, not the indig. And
that's an interesting mindfuck.
Oh, yeah.
To sow discontent, distrust.
Sure.
Like, weird. The indigenous people came back, but the Americans are dead.
Oof.
Yeah.
That'd be a tough one. You're taking trust equity out of the bank account. Probably unintentionally, but that's going to be very effective.
Amen. So by on January 1st, 69, our first team got hit. On the morning of January 1st, 69, 3 Americans were wiped out. And the indigenous escaped. They went back, picked up the bodies, and then that psychological impact hit. And like in my case, we were lucky because our team was really tight. Our team, I entered the secret war in May of 68, came into camp. Our ST Idaho disappeared. So there was an instant opening in Recon. And that's how I started. Spider Parks had been the team leader. So he was on the old team. He just got promoted, so he missed that mission. And fortunately for the team, our interpreter, Hep, and Sal, who was the counterpart, they didn't go on that mission. So we built the team around them.
In SOG itself, the MACV-SOG, was that built from the Green Beret community? Is that the inception of that?
Right. In the very beginning, there was Navy SEALs that ran some recon and SOG out of Khartoum in the early days.
And then there was like a photo shoot, and they're like, "We got to get out of here."
No more hair gel. We're out of here.
Like, what?
Wait,
I'm not getting a book publisher immediately. I'm out.
We don't have the small mirrors.
Oh, those are for signaling, not like. Like.
So I'm not sure, but yeah. And of course, the SEALs at that time were doing the missions on the coast.
Yeah.
Taking teams up, going in there. You had your 2 Medal of Honor recipients, Norris and Mike.
Yeah. Oh man, if you hadn't, yeah, I know. Damn it.
It'll come to us right away. But anyway, so they were doing everything up north, and in fact, a guy I grew up with in Trenton, New Jersey, when we got our SOG briefing, I met him there, and he was getting briefed. He said, I've been out with the SEALs, and they kept going up north, and they needed a commo guy. So he was riding with the SEALs as a commo guy going up north on whatever those little boats were that they had with big engines.
So my dad, interestingly enough, I just did a podcast with a guy who wrote, you'll dig this book. It's called The Hardest Place. History of the Petch Valley, Cunard, Korengal, all of that. And he had heard my dad was in the Brownwater Navy. So my dad, those boats were probably Mark 1s. So when I left the SEAL teams, we were working with Mark 5s. My dad was cruising around with probably at the time a glorious handlebar mustache, but 2 twin 50s and just foot pedals to mow shit down.
Nice.
That's how I ended up hearing about SEALs was from him. They were an insertion extraction platform, Brownwater Navy, going in and out of the Delta.
And we had one of our teams that was on a, quote, training mission in country on an island. We couldn't get helicopters to them, and they got run into the sea. And the Navy came in and saved their ass.
They got run into the sea on a training mission.
Yes. Yeah.
I've been on plenty of training missions, all in the U.S., and the biggest threat that I had was tripping and falling and hurting myself because we were shooting blanks.
Yeah. There was a stump on that mission that we talked about outside, the Tailwind. There was a Tom stump. I heard.
Oh, no. This is Stump.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Without the last letter. But he's an A1 Skyraider pilot.
Okay.
And he literally saved the SF team.
Yeah.
Because it was on day 4 of the mission. They'd been in, and at this point, they got the full attention of the NVA, and they were up against wave attacks. And they ran out of claymores, and they were getting ready to get overrun. The weather was bad, and the 1-0 was talking directly to Tom and said, save us.
Yeah.
And, of course, I learned this after the book is written.
Yeah.
But so Tom found a hole in the sky, came down and made the gun runs and broke the back of the wave attacks.
Yeah, he said he was so close you could see that he had, you could see his shave status from that morning because he was so close to
it. And this is A1 Skyraider, close support. My last mission, we had some gun runs with A1s. And on one of the gun runs, he was so close I could tell you that when he came in, he flipped on the side a little bit. He was smoking a Philly cheroot.
Of course.
Yeah. That's how close he was. I saluted, of course.
That's so awesome, man.
Oh, yeah.
Can you even imagine, Mike?
Like, I grew up in a world where, my world as a young man, and me and Andy have talked about this, was reading John Plaster's Secret Commandos and SOG. And
he's the godfather of SOG writers.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, what's cool is I met him when I graduated the Q course in 2003 at a book signing at the Airborne Special Operations Museum. He came and he signed a book. But my whole premise for like understanding what the military was going to be was from a SOG experience, right?
Really?
I wanted to be a SOG guy, and it was all from that. Like the first book I read, really in depth and in detail, that made me want to be a sniper was The Ultimate Sniper that Plaster wrote. That was available at Fort Bragg and General Jackson's and Ranger Joe's. You could pick it up. But I'm a 12-year-old like reading through this stuff. 12 years old. Wow. I was telling Andy, like, our generation now, when we got out and started doing, just even having these conversations like this, a part of the community that we belong to, just as yours is like, dude, why are you talking about anything that we did? And I'm like, well, one, it's helping people and it's educating them, but also a lot of things are lost. And so if you have an in-depth conversation about it, you're also inspiring a next generation. So I was inspired by SOG guys like you who were coming out like Plaster, and telling their stories.
Yeah, 20 years later, we waited.
20, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the NDA was 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And then when you guys started coming out, that inspired a whole generation of warriors. And my fear is, like, even now, there's only a few select guys that are coming out talking about stuff, especially from the early GWAT era, and inspiring a next generation. And if we don't keep doing that, who's going to be the next generation to fight for this country? I don't know who that's going to be.
I mean, if I think back about the first books that I was ever able to get my hands on, it was Men with Green Faces. So even my generation, so I joined the military August 1st, 96, and almost all of the information I could find was Vietnam-based and not specific at all. And actually the teams, Vietnam was actually really the first time that the teams were tested in their medals. You know, the maritime environment where they would start from the water, go operate on land, and come back to the water, which we slightly deviated from in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah. Well, but Team 1 earned their spurs down south.
They did, but it's the same thing about Mike reading about your generation and inspiring. I read about the guys at Team 1. Literally, I remember reading when I'm like 12, 13 years old about ambushes where they would, you know, again, the men with green faces, and they'd paint their face up, which is, I mean, you probably have worn camo face paint. I'm going to say Mike and I probably have not for real. I did it a lot in training evolutions.
In garrison and training, a lot.
But that is what spurred my desire. Those stories of hearing about that. Well, actually, I mean, I think it got it hooked. It's hooked into me early. But those stories that I were able to find, it was unbelievable. I do agree with you that I think that you have to continue to have those conversations.
Well, let me say on a footnote. Thanks to what you're doing, and Jocko, and now I understand you're doing some podcast.
Yeah.
See, this is the next wave of the future because there are people responding to that. My first Jocko podcast 2 years ago, if you haven't seen it yet, Jocko podcast number 180.
Yep.
But
fantastic.
Since then, I've had responses literally from around the world.
That's so cool.
And there are young people that say, in fact, I got an answer kid now, he's waiting, saying, hey, I want to do it. So I tell him, you know, go online, read what you got to do, get in shape, and learn land nav. But
that's your advice? People reach out to me saying they want to be a SEAL. I'm like, just quit now. It's easier.
Yeah. Start working on your publishing deal. Start writing, man.
Do you have an outline for your book yet? No, you're trash. Like, you go into the SEAL teams with your book written. What? I can say whatever I want.
You can.
Because
It's kind of true, though.
There have been quite a few SEAL books. And, you know, here's the thing. I think it matters how you talk about it. You know, 30 Seconds Out, right? The clothing brand, Sean Evangelista. He's been on the podcast before. He's coming up on Saturday. We're going to do another episode.
Oh, cool. Real good dude.
And he wanted to open with, when is sharing too much? You know, at what point does it become, you know, a negative consequence to the community? You know, when is the juice worth the squeeze? And I think a lot of it has to do with how you talk about it, because we can sit here and talk about all of our experiences and not give away the TTPs. That's where I think it is too far, where people try to monetize the actual tactic, technique, or procedure that we are taught.
Oh, yeah.
That I think is a bridge too far. But talking about the experiences or the lessons that you learned about yourself, that is invaluable, and I think that's what springboards the next generation as well. I mean, I hope it makes an impact. I'll be honest, completely selfishly, it is incredibly cathartic for me personally to sit down and talk about some of the past experiences. It has helped me address them and then work my way through them. So if other people benefit from it, that's great. But I mean, full disclosure, I'm probably benefiting the most from it out of anybody.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Since I've been, my podcast, my personal podcast is actually called Mike Force.
Is that right?
My name's Mike, but Mike Force.
No, I understand.
Obviously, the QRF elements you guys had. But everything in my mind about...
Well, let me just interrupt for a second to say Mike Force, because this is from our era, but one of the veterans of Mike Force, Jack Tobin, he explains it, said, you saw guys went out and you were clandestine, you watched, looked for the enemy, and then you tried to avoid contact. With Mike Force, we hunt for those fuckers.
That's awesome.
And
I just assumed you were super arrogant and named it after yourself. Like, I have my own. I had no idea that it actually.
No. This is
I'm like,
SF.
wow, Mike is at a different fucking level.
and the Mike Force, they saved many lives. When an A camp would be overrun or in the process of being overrun, who do you send? Mike Force.
That's so awesome.
Oh, it was incredible.
I should probably clarify that because maybe people don't know that.
I read that. I'm like, God, what an arrogant douche. But also, I love him, so I'm listening.
There we go.
Man, I didn't clarify. Oh, man.
Clarification number one, Michael.
I just, like, the idea of, I mean, I'm almost at a loss for words because looking at SOG growing up, everything that I wanted to be as a Green Beret tied back to that experience.
That's amazing.
That I read about.
Yeah.
And I was always disappointed because guys would always, the hard hitters in Special Forces, the Green Berets that were like there and they had been built around a culture they read about or their grandfather or father fought in, they were there and they wanted to be a SOG guy. And we talked about, I remember having conversations in the fire base in Kona province.
Really?
Thinking like, how do we reinvent these reconnaissance type operations and use some of your guys' TTPs that we knew about and kind of do some of the things that we were doing, which were cross-border at the time, to enact and to facilitate all the things that we were doing the right way. And we actually had, I remember on my first ODA, my first detachment, 366, a lot of the guys that were there, like Ben Bittner, who's was killed later, but a good friend of mine, we were all about MACV-SOG. And so we started doing recon missions on our own, not our own accord, but as an ODA, to do
good clarification,
small indigenous operations because, you know, the recon answer for the military is like, you need 15 guys. You know, you need a minimum of a 240, 2 saws, air support, and all these things. And I'm like, these guys were doing recon missions in Vietnam, sometimes without any support. Right, their QRF in one case with an Indig Montagnard commander, I believe, was like one guy. Like nobody was willing to go, so this one dude hops on the bird and he's like, "I'll go. Just send me. I'm going to be there." So it's like I constantly live this vicariously through you and your experiences, unbeknownst to you, obviously. But it's so what's really cool, Andy, the fact that you had me come out here because you told me John was going to be here, is.
By the way, I'm here because he told me you were going to be here. So you know.
No.
Okay,
is that how he works?
Yeah. Man, this just got super gay.
I think that your generation is now passing away, right? It's like it's like your generation growing up and seeing World War II veterans go, and we are losing all of this information and experiences and stories. That's such an impactful thing, including transitioning, which I want to talk about later, including like assimilating in culture, and then coming out and talking about stuff. I reached out to an SFA. It was a Facebook Special Forces Association page, and I said, "Hey, my name's this. I'm a Green Beret. I don't think I'm a douchebag. You guys can vet me. I'm trying to talk to MACV-SOG guys or Vietnam era SF guys because I want to start archiving the history. Not even for a podcast. I just want to put it on a microphone so we could record it and so we could, hold that, put it in the Smithsonian and save it for future generations. Because once you guys are gone, all of that is gone. Which means, we got to extract everything we can, John. We got to interrogate the hell out of them, get it all out.
You said something interesting, talking about being up in, the northeastern province, literally walking distance from Pakistan, trying to figure out how you replicate what your units were able to do. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking 2 U.S. service members and 3 to 5 indigenous personnel that would launch with you guys.
It would be 2 or 3.
Okay, so
a few of our guys ran solo by themselves with their indig, but those are separate stories. But they're
so. Let me tell you what would happen if you submitted over PowerPoint, which is how we got mission approval, something like that in the modern military. I don't even know if they would bother to respond to you. They, at least in every battle space that I ever worked in, they would never even consider that level of risk. I mean, I wasn't joking when we were sitting out in front of the restaurant before we came up here. I cannot believe that every single one of you do not have a Medal of Honor. Like the things that you guys did and the risk you were willing to tolerate is something that I have a hard time wrapping my head around it because it is so completely different than the military world that I grew up in and operated in. Like, Mike's not joking. Like, 15 people, you may even still get told that that's not enough. And then you're going to need to have...
By the experts, huh?
Yeah.
Well, by somebody who's going to actually bottom line it, right? Expert or not. But
as opposed to SF guys thinking on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the solution became more numbers, not less. This, I remember my first rotations to Afghanistan, we were in Hilux. The best vehicle on the face of the planet. It's basically a forerunner for people listening, but I believe they could go vertically. I mean, it was crazy what they could go over. And my first tour there, we weren't armored at all. I mean, you could punch a hole through this thing with a butter knife, and then it went mandatory Humvees, then mandatory up-armored Humvees, then mandatory MRAPs. And every time that you do that, it requires, an MRAP's going to hold like maybe 6 people plus a driver, a gunner, and a vehicle commander.
And a mechanic.
Yeah, you're going to need that, or you're going to end up blowing it up in the field, which is also fun sometimes too.
Done that a couple times.
Yeah,
really?
But
yeah.
But then you go from needing one vehicle. Now the minimum force is you got to take 4 out of the door, and then you need to have a QRF on standby, and then you need to have mandatory assets overhead, a Predator or a Reaper, or fixed wing close air support. Like, there's no, hey, I'm going to take another American or just myself and a few of the ANA or ANP and go solo mish. You would get laughed out of that mission approval process. It went the other direction. It became a matter, in my opinion, and I can only speak for myself, but what I saw is it became a numbers game, and I mean an escalating numbers game, not a decreasing, because even the first SEAL stuff in Vietnam, small units, and they would go and just disappear into the vegetation. They would do either reconnaissance, ambush, grab it until they could, and get the hell out of there. I never got to do a mission that was like that.
Never.
Oh,
ever.
yeah.
I almost, there's almost a guilt in me, because I'm a historian of war, so I've studied all wars, and I'm very passionate about the understanding of strategic warfare and how we fight it. And when I see guys from Vietnam, especially MACV-SOG guys, and in my own context, I have 4.5 years of combat, 9 combat rotations, and I feel guilty. God. Because I know it's nothing like what these guys have gone through.
Agreed.
And so I can't even, there's maybe a handful of times where I felt like this might be it. And those were very rare, even in specialized units. Even more so, because the more special you are, the more support assets you have. You don't even have to pull security, because you got a FLIR system that can see the heat that you can't see with your naked eye. And so in war, it's very rare, even in the global war on terror, to kind of even get close to the replication of even one combat operation. I mean, that operation that you talked about with Jocko Tailwind was a 4-day op.
Yeah.
And you had, each person, which was 16 Green Berets, was injured twice at least, because they had 30 plus Purple Hearts, and a couple indig that were killed. But when you think about just that operation in comparison to my experience, I've killed a lot of bad guys, I've got a lot of combat, but that is a completely different level. And so I want people to understand, when they're hearing this, you don't get the opportunity to sit in a room with a guy that has experienced this kind of thing around that culture. That's really war. Right. I don't consider the GWAT war. More people were killed in Chicago and than in the same time period than the war that was fought in Iraq.
And there's one more sidebar to what you just said about Operation Tailwind and how the military does not retain its history or learn from past experiences, because this is September 1970, Marine Corps air assets. And we had Air Force, Army, all supporting that team on the ground. About 10 years later, you had the debacle in the desert where the Marines couldn't even talk to the Air Force.
Yeah, which started JSOC.
Desert One.
Desert One, yeah.
And of course, even there, it took 7 years to get JSOC.
Yeah. So what a feat, what an accomplishment that was, right, for Tailwind.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to the story. There was CNN 1998, which a couple years after I went in the military, report on,
AKA the Communist News Network.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. When you guys were the discontent for CNN was early on, because they wrote that article where Ted Turner wrote apology letters, or at least one letter to the captain. But that's insane that you guys, it was twisted even decades later that it was some kind of
years later.
Yeah, there was some campaign to launch chemical weapons and then hurt our own, right? There was a
they said that that team used the sarin gas, and they said the mission was to go into Laos to find dissident Americans who had deserted, and that we went in, the team went in and killed Americans, and of course they killed women, innocent babies, and children too. Like they always throw that line in at the end, which is completely false. They used tear gas to break that last attack.
Yeah, CS.
CS, and that's what saved their bacon, literally, because the wave attacks continued like they did.
Yeah,
and the first the final day there was 3 helicopters. First one left with auto wounded. Second one left with more ground fire, and the third one, that's where Mike Rose's guys. The tear gas was still in the air, and the NVA were coming out of it a little bit off balance. That gave them enough time to get on the CH-53 Delta and to take off. As it's taking off, the door gunner, Sergeant Stevens, I think it was, gets shot in the neck through and through, and Mike Rose saved his life as they were leaving.
Yeah. And then they crash.
Oh, yeah.
Like right over the next ridge line.
They go over the first mountain, the first engine goes out.
Yeah.
And they go over the second mountain top, and the second engine goes out. And the pilot has to auto-rotate in. They never trained on auto-rotation with a fully loaded helicopter with Green Berets and intel and everything they got from that mission.
Wow. And
when they did crash, auto-rotating in, the team captain crushed 14 of his teeth into dust.
Yeah.
Gene McCarley. And Mike Rose gave me that number yesterday, a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And I never realized it. And they got thrown out of the helicopter, of course, several of them. And but they survived it all. They came back.
Crazy.
Good God.
Indeed.
How do you get selected? Sorry, Annie.
No, I was gonna ask. I think it was more. You were gonna go to the selection for MACV-SOG.
Yeah.
I was gonna. Well, so along with that, did you get any additional training for what you were going to be doing in Vietnam, or did you go from the Green Beret pipeline and it's just like, hey, here's your new job, figure it out on the fly?
No, in my case, again, I was very fortunate. After we're done with the regular SF training, I was a commo geek, so they sent a bunch of us down to Fort Gordon. We were down there TDY for 3 months on RTT. They wanted SF top secret clearance to do that. R&R. Then we went to Nam.
Yep.
So we had traditional in-country training, learned how to work with TAC Air, helicopters. They had a couple of experimental helicopters we worked with. So we wanted to make sure that when you use these, you didn't chop your head off getting on and off the birds and stuff. In-country training and patrol, I don't even remember that. And then when we had gone through training, we had guys that had been to Nam 2 or 3 times. And they said, after your in-country training, a little guy's going to come out and say to you, we're looking for volunteers. Don't do it. Go to an A team, learn about the people, the country, go see what it's like. Well, hell, this is 1968. John Wayne was in the Green Berets. They just showed it while we were going through the in-country training. So, sure enough, in-country training's done. Out comes the little guy. We're looking for volunteers. And Johnny McIntyre, my buddy, goes, for what, Sarge? Can't say. Either you're in or you're out.
God damn it, I'm in.
Yeah. And that's it, dude. So we saw the movies, and we jumped out of our chairs, me, Rick Howard, and a bunch of our guys, McIntyre.
But did they give you additional? So obviously,
no. So
you volunteered because here we are.
Right. So we do that, go up, get the top secret briefing, and again, we've been students for now 15 months. So we go in, we get our pens and pads out, ready to take notes, and the sergeant major walks and put that shit away. This is a top secret briefing. That's when everything changed right there. And so he says, in front of you is that, what do you call that, the non-disclosure?
Yep, yeah, NDA.
Yeah, so we said, you got to sign that first before we say anything further. So either you're in or out. If you don't want to sign it, get out. So we all stayed, we signed it, and he pulled it like one of these black curtains, pulls it down. There's Vietnam with all the cities, and across the fence, Laos with target boxes, and Cambodia with target boxes. And we go, welcome to the secret war. This is where it is.
But what about additional training? Like, hey, now we're going to put you in the pipeline, or it's like, welcome to the show. Here's your car 15.
Well, everybody was individual.
Yeah.
So when you came in, like in our case, the team gets wiped out. We get a new 1-0, and then we hired 4 or 5 new Vietnamese, and 3 of those were 15 years old.
Oh, fuck me.
Brought them in, and so we all trained together. You start out with the basics every day. You go through all the drills, live fire.
How much time we talking?
Well, we had monsoons also, so we were training, dealing with monsoons. So in my case, we didn't get on the ground for a real target until August. So the team is formed up at the end of May into June, train through June, deal with some monsoons, July, and then we trained for a special mission to put it in the Air Force sensors in the Ashaw Valley, which for us was our premier target. Did the mission, no gunfire. They fought when they wanted to fight. Then we put it in the same Air Force sensors up at Quezon, and again, no ground fire, nothing to speak of. And then we had a practice mission. Again, minimal contact. And then Spider Parks then left the team to go fly Covey, and Don Wolken became the team leader. I was assistant team leader. And then we had our first mission, Echo 4, where we've been on the ground for the second day, and then we made contact. They kept coming at us wave after wave.
So you get to train. So when you showed up and you got selected and you said, hey, I want to be in this, and the guys that are with you that just came there with you, do they try to train you together to be in the same recon team when you go through your training? Well,
first thing was you would get selected for the team.
Yeah.
Now, here's another example. Tom Cunningham came into our camp in the early week of August. It would be at the end of July. So Tom Cunningham he'd gone through the pipeline, volunteered for SOG, comes in. ST Louisiana, the 1-0 was Pete Boggs. The 1-1 was John Walton, the medic. And they trained up quickly for 2 days. I think it was a Saturday, August the 3rd, 1968. They go in. That's his first mission. So he was in camp less than a week. But he had some experience, and they trained him up enough where John knew him. Says, I know Tom. He'll be a stand-up guy if we get into a firefight. Well, they got overrun 3 times. The third time the team gets overrun, the 1-0 called in an A1 Skyraider gun run on the team. The 20 Mike rounds hit Tom twice. One round hit the pre-RC-25, wounding the 1-0. The second round sent Tom flying through the air with his leg blown off, hanging on just by some sinew. And so that's another example. And John Walton, the medic, to his credit, brought Tom back alive. They had an indige that had been shot 4 times. John brought him back, as well as the 1-0. Now, one of the little people was killed, and they had to leave him there. Because, here's the first helicopter that comes in. It's a King Bee, South Vietnamese Air Force. They pick up the Pete Boggs and the wounded indige, take off, because the second helicopter is going to come in. And the second helicopter gets shot out. The third helicopter gets shot out. The first one comes back with Captain Tin, and he picked up John Walton. And Walton had he and the one indige that had not been wounded are there by themselves on the ground, get on the King Bee and take off. It was so high and so hot that he couldn't take off vertically. He had to do a run to get enough lift just to get over the trees. And then he did laps in the valley the day before he came back, all while under enemy fire.
Mike, do you know of a single story that even resembles that in the last 20 years of warfare?
Really. There's the one that happened in Shock Valley, where the whole team, Green Beret team, one of the guys, John Wayne Walding, one of the guys lost his leg, pinned it to his he lost his leg from the knee down, pinned it to his thigh, and stayed in the fight. One of the team sergeants was in the SIF with me, and extraordinary acts of heroism. But it was like one instance of combat, right? And then
I feel like that was a Thursday.
That was like a normal day.
Yeah, and then like Friday, they're like, "Hey guys, get your stuff. We're going again."
It's insane. So how come they don't do that with us? I've always wondered, how come they don't, like Band of Brothers, right? You got guys who are trained. They go to Sand Hill. They get all their training together, and then they deploy as a platoon. You got recon elements that are MACV-SOG guys that are trained as a volunteer, get selected together. But in our community, you don't have that. you're typically trained. I was a half Korean guy speaking French, getting deployed to the Middle East. You know what I mean? Like they don't. It's very randomized. There's no like I want to go to basic training with dudes that I'm going to serve with in combat. You know, that we're going through the pipeline together, and we're going to be a recon team or a platoon or a squad or a troop. And we don't do that. We don't do that very well at all. It's like a numbers thing.
Yeah, I was going to say it might be the end result of the size, of the growing size of the force. And maybe it hits a tipping point where they can't do things like that. But I mean, so that's a week after the guy had been, raised.
Came into camp on a Monday. I think it was a Saturday. He's gone forever. But, thank God to John Walton. He kept him alive. Tom went out, got married, had his wonderful wife. They had 2 children. And sadly, he lost his wife years ago. But the kids are still going on. He's up in the Grand Estate.
Crazy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
How was your first experience in combat? Was it what you thought it would be?
No.
Because you guys got into what I'm going to call a doozy.
Yeah.
Well, see, don't forget, we got into our firefight October 7th, 68. On October the 5th, we had ST Alabama, the 9-man team that went in up against 10,000 NVA. And the only reason why we know the number, because Lynn Black, who was the assistant team leader on that, who became the team leader, talked to the guy that ambushed him.
Really?
25 years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did that affect your headspace when you were proximal to all of that happening? And maybe it hadn't happened to you yet because you were early on, like you said, you'd done.
Oh, it's still green as grass.
Green as grass, but you have to at some point. You're like, oh my God, like this is 100% real because Alabama's happening and all these other things. What's going through your head when you haven't experienced it yet, but all these other units that are around you are going through
John
this?
and I were good friends. So after the August 3rd mission, the first thing we talked about that night and the next day was, what did you learn? And he had gone down TDY to Khartoum also. And when he came back, they had some lessons down there they picked up. So we always talked to each other, at least on the basic level, So on October the 5th, when they get into this world of shit, and the reason why they did, they had an inexperienced team leader. He had rank. They made him the team leader, pulled off a team leader who had experience in the AO. First major mistake.
Because he didn't have as much rank. He was a lower rank.
Yeah, so he came from Germany for a 10th group, and because he had the rank, they made him a team leader. He goes in. Lynn Black, who had a tour of duty with the 173rd, was familiar with the NVA. And they saw an NVA flag. He says, hey, there's at least 3,000 people here. Let's get out. They took enemy fire. And the team leader goes, no, we're going down the path. Again, that violates the first rule. So they got ambushed. Sadly, the point man was killed on contact. The 1-0 was killed. And another team member was wounded. And they walked into an L-shaped ambush.
Geez.
That NVA troop, they had 50 NVA up there. And they fought. They finally eventually pulled back. And so 20, 25 years later, they went back to try to find the body of the 1-0. After that effort, that's when Lynn Black talked to the general. And the guy was a colonel on the day he came in. He said, yeah, we had 50 NVA up there. And they talked back and forth. And the colonel told him we had a division. Lynn said, we thought it was a battalion of 3,000. And they had, between the Air Force, our gunships, Marine Corps gunships, the muskets, they went all day, literally. They lost a Jolly Green Giant, and another Jolly Green Giant crashed afterwards. They lost a King Bee, which was a South Vietnamese Air Force. So we were on standby to go in as a bright light, and the bright light was to go in to help a team out. Well, the Covey said there's too much shit going on, there's too many enemy. If you go in, it's going to get worse. So then we changed to go back, because October 6th, we got inserted. So in answer to your question, our mindset was, right now we're bright light. Get ready. So you put away all food and water, just guns, bullets, and body bags.
And bright lights, whoever's designated QRF for a search and rescue for
Correct.
a shit hit the fan.
Yeah,
like
for
really
down
bad
pilots or for a team in trouble or whatever. That's what that was for. So we got withdrawn from that, so we went back, changed our gear to get ready for the mission. First light the next day, we're on the birds going in. So we were on the ground for a day. The second day, we had trackers. We knew we had trackers the day before. We just couldn't shake them. So at 2 o'clock, they hit us. But the 1-0, Don Wolken, was smart enough. He put us on top of a little knoll. And so we're in triple, double canopy. And when they came out of the jungle, our knoll was small enough they only send so many. So we just kept blowing them down the hill. And then finally, at one point, Don says to me, look at that. And I couldn't see because the jungle was just dark. And what they were doing was stacking up the dead bodies because they wanted to get on top of the dead bodies to shoot down at us.
Get some, Mike.
So they're stacking bodies to get defilade.
They want to get a little elevation.
They wanted to achieve high ground via corpses.
Yeah, I'm going to integrate that into my next gunfighter carbine course.
Yeah, and so here's the other one. You talk about tunnel vision. So at one point, we had a wave attack going. I'm going into the jungle, and Fook, our point man, opened fire. Now, I thought he was shooting over my shoulder into what was coming up the hill at me or coming out of the jungle. We got back to base the next day. I said, my ear is all... It was because you had the full blast on full automatic of a Car-15. And I said, man, why were you shooting over my shoulders? You dumb shit. To the right, the NVA were coming up, and they're just getting ready to kill you. So I'm looking here.
And there's a guy right there. You didn't even know it until post-brief.
Right.
What was your... We're so spoiled in the military, man. Like well, they didn't even have ear pro. There's no ear pro.
No.
I mean, we had noise canceling, electronic pelletors.
I got to tell you, I would have
mics.
run over your mother to get those nods you have today.
Oh yeah.
No kidding.
That would have
right?
changed some things, right?
It would have changed some things.
Oh yeah.
Oh, crazy. So what was your? Talk to me about your kit setup, because I know like a lot of MACV-SOG guys preferred like RPDs that were cut down.
That was later.
That was later.
Yeah.
What was your Car-15?
68 was Car-15 was my sweetheart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had 3 during my time, my 2 tours there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had 600 plus rounds for the car.
600. What is that? That's
remember
over 30 mags because we're talking 20
lot of
rounders.
mags.
Yes.
Wow.
20 round mags, and sometimes we always had a couple extra, those little brown packages with the
bullets in them.
Bullets in them, just in case.
Yeah.
And then about 10 to 12 frag grenades and maybe 10 to 12 rounds for the M79.
Yeah.
Which included 1 CS, and then we always carried at least 1 Willie Peter.
Yeah.
And I carried the radio and then a battery for that.
The rest of it was HE for the 40 mic.
Right. Yeah.
So we used those thumpers, like Vietnam era thumpers.
Oh,
which
yeah.
always made me proud.
You saw it down?
Oh,
yeah, we saw it down.
All right. Yeah.
Right.
That's the
I got some kills with a thumper.
pirate guns. Those things are badass.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah. Oh, I got to tell you, I had a guy, a Navy SEAL, who AD'd a thumper.
I know of one.
There was a Area 4 in Iraq at Baghdad.
Yep.
Task force mission. We just got back, and it was a SEAL SIF task force mission. And we came back, and we were getting in the staging area, dropping off pucks to task force, and I heard ka-dunk, and everybody was like looking around, like, dude, did somebody just AD a 40 mic? And then the lull kind of, everybody was like, no, it didn't happen. And then all of a sudden you hear, because on the distance, BIOP, it landed on the airfield, and then you hear, and then it's incoming.
Yeah.
So everybody gets their CIB and their cab badges and their combat badges. But what had happened was one of the NAVSOF guys had a M79 loaded on his back, which whatever, to each their own. I would never do that personally, but we just came off a target, so he might have had it hot, and we were in engagement as well. So he has it on his back, and he gets hung up. And at that time, we were running open back Humvees, so no armor, but we were sitting on like benches, right? And he got caught up on something, and he pushed through it, and then shot around off his back. Ooh. Well, he goes in. We have this brief, and everybody's like pointing fingers and talking about stuff. And one of the armors comes in, and sure as shit, that M79 was a Vietnam era 79. All of ours were. We found out later. Yeah. And they weren't like upgraded, and you could put it on safe and push through the safe. You could pull the trigger on safe the whole time. So he apologized to the entire troop, and everybody was like, hey man, shit happens. Like no harm, no foul. And he moved on. I was like, only in the GWAT with task force, with that circumstance specifically, could you do that.
I was on a target once where a Green Beret AD to 40 mic twice.
Really?
No, not
You're
at all.
lying.
I'm just trying to outdo your story because we're talking shit about SEALs.
Was it on a ladder?
No, I'm just joking.
You got
like,
it.
God damn it, he's talking shit about SEALs.
I got your answer for you. Here's your answer. My first self-inflicted wound was when we were cutting back the M79s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because the question was, if you cut them back, how far can you cut them back and have the round still rotate enough
Got it, yeah.
that it activates?
Yeah,
on
it has to
contact?
rotate, yeah.
Yeah, for people listening, it's what is it, 33 yards?
Yes, it's 33 yards.
Piezoelectric fuse that is activated by the twist.
Yes.
So you can ADM into the ground in front of you. Not recommended.
Yeah.
I've seen it, though.
A hot grenade, yeah, and it not go off.
It will not go off, but also you shouldn't soccer kick it after that. Also, I've seen that.
And it might go off.
It never went off, and we called EOD shortly thereafter.
Well, so in my case, we kept trying. So finally, we had it down to the absolute minimal length.
Yep.
So, boop, bong, it goes off really quick. And so I turned to Rick Howard, my buddy, and I said, "Hey, Rick, I think a bee just stung me." He pulls my shirt up. He said, "You dumbass, you just shot yourself."
Yeah, shrapnel from that.
Shrapnel from the round, because that was as we were cutting them back. So that way, there's your Harry dumbass story for today.
Going back to, what was it, Alabama that was in?
Oh, yeah.
What was the criteria? As long as they had radio comms with a unit on the ground, would they continue to provide air support? Like, what was their criteria where they would stop doing that and assume that they were lost?
Oh, if they stopped talking.
Okay.
And
which could suck because radios suck up rounds sometimes too.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm just trying to figure out.
Well, they lost comms, and then you also had the NVA that came online interfering with the commo. And the classic example, the tragic example was the first time the King Bee came in for a resupply, and they said, we're going to pop smoke. Well, they didn't, the tradition is don't say the Keller.
Yeah.
So as he's coming in and say, okay, we're going to pop white. Well, whatever they popped, the NVA guessed and popped the same thing. So the King Bee went to the NVA gas and got blown out of the sky.
To an ambush?
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me on this?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we hear you loud and clear.
I can't hear anything on this.
You can't hear anything?
No, it's dead. It's just that new budget setup, man.
How is your headset dead?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't hear myself through the headphones. That's weird.
All right,
I can hear you.
Yeah, let me fix it.
Test.
Test.
Test. I could hear static in my headphones, but I can't hear the voice through the mic. Oh, there it goes.
You're back.
What'd you do? Test it. Yeah, it's good now. Look at that.
That's really good now.
I just added 5 minutes to editing.
You're
an hour. You just added an hour.
I don't edit the podcast.
Oh, sweet.
What did I do? I unplugged it.
Did I say anything weird?
No, I plugged it back in.
You high-tech wizard, you.
He's good at this.
I am super limited. I go off switch, on switch, and if it doesn't work, I immediately start Googling like technical support. I can't do any of it myself. No.
Smart.
So you like on the kit thing. Can I go back to the kit just real quick?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
So on the kit, were any of the kit that you had? Because we had me and Andy had a black side Dodix, right? You can get black side specialized equipment, whether it was munitions, ammunition, guns.
We had that also.
Okay, so you were able to get specific types of weapon systems that you weren't able to get.
Right, and we also had experimental stuff. Of course, the CAR-15 was new.
Yeah.
So when I first got in '68, they were a rare commodity, the FOB1.
Yeah.
What were they using before that?
Anything.
Like M16s, basically?
No. Well, some guys carry 16s, but they had the Swedish K, the grease gun. A couple guys carried the Sten, which, I don't understand that at all, but that was the early days. And, of course, they said they didn't want to have weapons that were U.S. made.
Attributable.
Yeah.
Right. So the Swedish K was a weapon of preference, and, of course, it fired from the open bolt, which is that's just nuts.
Yeah.
But then along came the CAR-15.
Did you have any problems with the CAR-15?
Never.
Never?
I had 3. My last tour of duty, I got a brand new one right out of the wrap, the box, and everything.
Yeah.
Took it down to the range. It was perfectly zeroed.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I know what happened to one of them, which I bet Mike hasn't heard this story, but we'll have to get to that.
Not today, no.
It's an unbelievable story. How'd you lose the first one? Or was your...
That's the first one.
The trapeze incident was the first one?
Flying through the air without the greatest of ease.
Yeah. How'd you lose the second one?
End of my tour of duty.
Okay.
Turned it in. Then came back the second tour. I got the third car.
How long did it take you to start getting, or maybe you never got comfortable? I guess the better question would be, how long did it take until you started clicking with that environment that you were in? Like I always found with me, first 5 to 7 operations like that have this level of hyper awareness, right? Everything is a threat. And then the last 5 to 7, nothing is a threat. It's like very equally dangerous sides of the pendulum swing. One is because you're not in tune with your environment, and the other one is because you're just completely complacent because you're kind of over it. How long did it take you to get comfortable in that environment you were operating in?
Well, after that target on October 7th, from that day forward, I was comfortable. More comfortable in the jungle than back at base camp. Didn't like the bullshit at camp.
Really?
And that's why we're there. That's why we signed up to be SF.
Yeah. You wanted to fight.
Yeah. And to do the mission, preferably, if I have my drugs, I prefer to go run a 5-day recon, do wiretaps, take pictures, and come home. Write a nice after-action report, go downtown, get a steam and cream or something like that, whatever, and then go back to work take 5 days off. But by November, our attrition rate was so low that there were days when our team was the only operational team in camp. And when I arrived there, they had 30 recon teams. So by November, which is 4 months later or 5 months later, they're down to us being the only operation. That's between teams being wiped out, wounded in action, sick, illness, transitions, guys going home. And so we had days where you just go out and go to S3 in the morning. Here's your target. And
were you guys involved in the targeting at all, or were you just receiving targeting packages?
We come out of
Holy shit.
The chain of command came from the White House to our headquarters, then we get it. And then any of our reports would go back to our headquarters in Saigon, then right to the White House. They had a special SOG envoy there that was picking up the reports and stuff.
Holy shit. That is not how my reporting chain of command went.
Yeah. Yours is a little different, a little more sync pack involved.
It was just emails. I would do some emails and send it up. And first off, the operational tempo that he's describing is insane. Maybe not the operational tempo, but what was occurring during those operations.
Yeah.
And the tempo associated with that level of activity is mind-blowing to me.
It's like World War II bomber statistics.
Exactly.
It's like the same thing.
That's a great analogy.
Every time you go out, you're definitely going to lose a crew or 2 or 3 maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Did you notice the NVA changing and adapting their tactics as you guys had more time in country?
Yeah, and of course we heard the rumors about them having the sappers and the killer teams.
And those were specifically designed by them to track MACV-SOG members? Okay.
Right. And by the end of the war, they had up to a battalion that they were training up for those missions.
What kind of training were they giving them? Do you know?
I don't know. We're just beginning to learn about that, and stand by. Okay. I just know that they are trained up, and we were told that initially they would just come in nothing but a loincloth. And of course, August 23rd, 1968, the day of the greatest Green Beret casualty in our SF history, we lost 16 Green Berets. They planned for a year a sapper attack on a moonless night, which was August 23rd, 1968, on our base camp, which was FOB4 in Da Nang. They came in and they planned on a day. We had a promotion board, and we had also the headquarters that had been at the air base at Da Nang came into the buildings on our headquarters area at CCN, FOB4.
Sounds like they had some inside baseball knowledge.
Oh, absolutely.
To plan that, yeah.
Yeah, and they even did their final briefing that night in the base in the indigenous mess hall. And they had, in the morning, they found what they had charts and their maps and things on that for their final briefing to their commanders and the sappers and stuff. 2 of our loyal indigs went up, saw something suspicious. They got their throats cut. Wow. And they hit, and they were under that firefight all night. It was one of those tragic episodes. But the sappers were real, and that told us right there that they're dead serious. And they wore headbands. We came to die.
Really?
And they did.
Wow. I also enjoyed operating in a loincloth.
Oh, I know. That sounds freeing.
Playing water polo. Not in the military, which is essentially what a Speedo
is. Did you, when you guys operated, did you know how big this whole thing was? Or were you so mission focused and kind of basically you were operating unattribbed to anything? Were you just like in your own little world operating? Or what did you know, like, hey, this is a big deal. These things that we have going on, this is making very large strategic, the gates that you guys are meeting is very strategic because it's at the White House. But did you know that at the time, or are you just mission focused and doing your job?
No, we knew that the reports went to the big house, and we knew that this was that was our tip of the spear then.
Yeah, you're the Super Bowl. This is
right. So we knew that, but on the other hand, we also knew the reality of on the ground.
Yeah,
and how they're working against us. And so and on top of that, we never realized how completely compromised we were, in that they had a spy in our MACV-SOG headquarters in Saigon. And don't forget, too, the additional thing was that when the USS Pueblo was seized by North Korea in November of '67, they did so at the behest of the Russians. And when that ship came in, it was an intel ship that had the latest state-of-the-art encryption equipment and radio equipment, which the Russians took to Cambodia. At the time, the Johnny Walker spy ring was also operating, and they would get the CAT codes and the other codes and get them to Russia, which would get them to Cambodia, so that they were able to listen to a lot of our top secret commo, Army, Air Force, not sure about Navy. Navy, yes, and maybe the Marine Corps. And they had that insight. Now, how well they used it, but we know they had it. Of course, we learned this years later.
Well, it almost seems like when you guys would insert, it was almost a matter of an afterthought that there were going to be people expecting you, tracking you. I mean, so they obviously knew you were coming. That almost became part of like the expected portion of operation.
The classic example, we're going into an LZ with the South Vietnamese Air Force. At the last second, I forget, I think it was Sal, who my counterpart, yelled to the door gunner in Vietnamese, and the helicopter pulled away. Sal saw, how I'll never know, a wire across the LZ that was attached to a 500-pound bomb. Had he not told them that to avoid that wire...
Yeah, vaporized.
Yeah. We'd be fertilizer in Laos today. Now, they knew we were coming.
Yeah.
They had time to put that together.
Wow.
And then the other thing was they always had point people. So when we took off, people there would say which direction, which azimuth we were on. At the border, they had watch stations. So when they would continue the helicopters, so that was their additional intel network. We knew about it, and the key thing was just to get on the ground to try to avoid the trackers.
When there was that incident of seeing the wire across the LZ, did that send any like red star clusters up inside of HQ? Like, hey, maybe our ship has a few leaks.
Because WTF factor was multiplied in our minds. The guys on the ground, all the reports go back to Saigon, and even like we wanted better radios as far back as '68, begging for radios, which never really happened until later, and. We later learned from CIA guys that talked to Russians who were there who were part of the Russian secret war in Vietnam, who said, hey, we're amazed those SOG guys never got more sophisticated radio equipment, because they RDF'd us all the time. So we got to the point where if we were on the ground, no commo unless it was time for
emergency.
Yeah. Because if they come by for a commo check, it would be just 2 clicks on the handset.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Because their RDF was sharp.
So how did they RDF you guys? Did they just triangulate you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the classic example, we had a team that was, Pat Eddington was the 1-0. He looked Asian. And I forget what his true ethnicity was, but he looked Asian.
Mike looks Asian too.
Yeah, look, man, he had that look. See, you could have, he had an all NVA team, Chu Hoys. They all came over to our side. One mission was to go to an American POW camp. Pat's on the ground with his team, going to the camp. Up on FM comes a voice in perfect English. Pat Eddington, we know you're the 1-0 of RT Cobra, which it was. You're going to this POW MIA camp. I'm telling you, if you continue with the mission, by the time you get here, every American POW will be dead. I will personally kill them. So you got a choice. You can continue with the mission or go to fuck home. Well, Pat says, I think I'll go home now.
Holy shit.
Jesus.
Can you imagine that?
What?
Another time, Lynn Black and Doug Letourneau. So Doug's got the radio, the Frenchman, my buddy, right? This is between my tours of duties. I'm back squandering a 10th group at Fort Devens. But the Frenchman's on the ground, and in clear English, a guy comes and says, Frenchman, we know where you are. We know where RT Idaho is. You and Lynn Black are there. Now, the interesting thing about that first comment is a week earlier, the third American on the team went home. He derosed. So the guy talking to him, who we believe was a Cuban, his intel knew that there was only 2 Americans. And he talked back and forth to him and said, we're going to come get you. And so Lynn hears Doug talking to the guy, and Lynn gets on the phone and talks to this guy. And the guy goes, we know where you are. And Lynn goes, well, he says, yeah, we got your 6-digit coordinate. And Lynn goes, well, here's my 8-digit coordinates. Come get me, motherfucker. And so then at the top, this is the part you'll like. He goes, your mother was a piss poor hooker. Because if she was a good hooker, you'd be in the States now. You wouldn't be stuck in Laos.
Power move.
Ooh.
How's that?
Ooh.
Power move.
And by the way,
in the J.
Yeah.
Flexing in the J.
Hooker flex.
And so, by the way, they never came for him because he had high ground.
Shit. I mean, the world Mike and I came from encrypted radios. I mean, you could switch it over to being, in the open if you wanted to, but there'd be no reason to. So we're talking encrypted or purely digital or iridium.
HPW,
yeah, or iridium. It's like, I can't even imagine. I mean, I guess we could have gotten on the ICOM.
That's cool. I would have.
Yeah. I mean, I may
have
or
that
may
kind
not.
Of communication.
I may or may not have been around when an interpreter got on the ICOM a few times and talked a little bit of
smack.
Shih Tzu.
I like that.
Shih Tzu.
Those are my favorites.
But I mean, there's no way they were getting a hold of the ability to talk to us over our radio networks. I guess they could have RDF'd us, but I don't think they had that technology available. No. But what you're describing, and that. Man, there are some red flags in that. Obviously, the specificity of the information, like that to me, I feel like in the modern era would be a dead stop, recompartmentalize everything, figure out, I would hope that that's what they would do, figure out where the fuck the leak is coming from, and then build from there. Because that's insane.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's the most inside baseball you could have on what's going on there. That's
and this
crazy.
is where the 1-0s are talking to each other, saying, these are the problems we know we've got.
Fuck.
When you guys were doing operations, is it like, a bomber crew goes out in World War II, they do a specific run, and they get retired, right? They do
25 missions.
25 missions, right? What is the criteria for you guys, and then how is that experience and working up and leading up to it? How did that feel? Because I imagine when entire teams are getting wiped out, what's like the psychology of you guys to stay sane in it? Because I know you're in the fight, but you're like, hey, my buddy just got, he just got killed with his entire team. So it was getting serious. Was there...
Well, keep in mind, I landed there in May of 68. So around 20th May, 22nd of May. And by that time, we had at least 4 or 5 teams wiped out. You had Roy Benavides that had his experience May 8th.
Yeah.
That's a CCS case.
Yeah.
That at that time, we didn't even know about it because he's down south, we're north. And we had another team. Everybody was killed except for the 1-0 who E&E'd for 3 days. John Allen came back. And we had another team that was wiped out on the 27th of March. A second team, the 1-0 was on the ground, and the helicopters come in. They can't lift the full team. He puts a Monty yard on, a helicopter lifts and leaves him on the ground. They don't come back.
And
This is just in the first 5 months of 68. So, you know what? Like anybody, it's like we got to get on with the next target.
Yeah.
You try to learn what you can. You get the mission, answer to your question, because you got to continue on. That's why we're here.
So I'm assuming there's no risk mitigation. Like you guys are all in. It doesn't seem like the pace of SOG's.
Well, the other thing was you served in SOG as long as you wanted. The thought was if you got on a team when you first get there, you'd run recon for 8 or 9 months. The last couple of months, you would have light duty somewhere. You didn't have to stay on the team. Or any time you wanted off. Like we had a gentleman that came on our team for Echo 4. He came in from the 173rd, had a tour of duty, outstanding soldier. And after that mission, he finally came up to me and said, hey, I can't do it. I've never seen anything like this in my life. I can't do it.
Wow.
And I said, hey, thanks. I'd rather you tell me now. And then we got him a good job. We worked with him and said, thank you for being honest.
Yeah, all volunteer.
All volunteer. And also, like again, we were hurting for men. So they were bringing people for the 173rd, 101st. And then at some point, they even brought in some legs just to have a manpower to see if they could run or not.
Really?
I'll let you describe what a leg is, you Army folk.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, I don't know where it originates from, but I know
traditionally a dirty, nasty leg.
Yeah, dirty, nasty. It used to be a huge thing, right? When we had maroon berets and it was only about airborne, it was a big deal. If you were a dirty leg and you had
non-airborne qualified
guy.
Indeed.
So when you're doing these operations and the pace is going to what it's at, what are you guys doing to kind of keep morale back at the fire base, back at base? Are you guys allowed to? You said you had mentioned R&R. Are they allowing you guys to decompress, to come back, to stay healthy, or is it just constant?
Well, in our case, because of November, December of '68, the op tempo, they just needed people on the ground.
Yeah.
So at some point, by November, we had the team trained up well enough that I could rotate little people out. So Bubba Shore was with me. He was my assistant team leader. He came on in October, and Don flew Covey with Spider. And so we had days, 3 or 4 days in a row, where we go out in the morning, get shot out of the primary, secondary, and alternate. That they're low on fuel, go back, get a new target, do it again. And so this happened like 2 or 3 days in a row. The third day, we finally get inserted in the afternoon. And even then, the weather's questionable. And I went on the ground, and it was a little bit more of an open area. So I put the team online, and we just went up this hill for like a long period of time. Because usually we do a 10-10. Move for 10, wait for 10. Well, this day, I just pushed everybody. We eventually got to a road, a double-lane highway that you couldn't see from the sky. Crossed it, set up a wiretap, had a perfect ambush in place, and when we were getting ready to blow it, Spider came back over a couple hours, literally 2 or 3 hours later, and said, I gave him the code for a POW, and we'll meet you back at the LZ. And that's when he said, don't move, don't fart, don't do anything. I'm at 10,000 feet, and I can't see the mountain you're on.
Wow.
Yeah, the pucker factor went to -0. About then, we heard the tanks above us. And the people who were diddy-bopping up and down the trail, we're taking pictures of them on the trail. They had their AKs on their shoulders, officers.
We should clarify, he's talking about the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
right.
not like a little foot. It's not a footpath.
Yeah.
And it had varying sizes, but this one was really large. And, of course, just getting across the trail like that was fun. But we had trained up on our little people were just great.
Yeah.
So we were there, and then that was the beginning of 5 days of just... That was the night the guy came in and touched my boot.
You haven't heard that story, have you?
No, I want to hear this. We got to. Let's just hear this.
Well, and so I have a question that maybe could lead into this. Out of all the things you guys launch on an operation, right? Obviously, you volunteer to join the military. You volunteer to go down the Green Beret pipeline. You volunteer for SOG.
Oh, yeah, I read the book, The Green Berets. And
of course.
I flunked out of college. My dad goes, hey, dummy.
Yep.
So I knew I was going to go in. And I didn't want to get drafted. And I read that book and said, that's it, I'm going with these guys. If I can qualify for this. And luckily, they lowered the standards, so I got through it.
That's how it worked for me as well in the standards section.
Indeed.
But you get in country and you start doing these operations. Out of all the things that involve the risk, getting shot out of your LZ, contact with the NVA, weather rolling in and you being isolated, no overhead, air support, getting into firefights, having the trackers. Out of all the things that you were exposed to, what put the hair up on the back of your neck the most?
Those first 2 seconds of the firefight.
Of just in general, of every firefight, yeah.
That's that moment in time you trained your whole life for. Because, again, we had to get that fire superiority within those first 2 seconds. And my little people were just the best.
How often would you see the enemy?
You know what? We didn't see them as often as you'd think we would. Because a lot of times our people were so good that they would fire. We never got ambushed.
Yeah.
We would hear them coming for us. So we would usually launch the first series of rounds. And then we gained fire superiority right on top of that. Because they could just switch those magazines out and continue to go. And that would be the long and the short of it. If you don't get that fire superiority those first 4 or 5 seconds, you are dead meat.
Yeah, the momentum works in both directions. Because if you gain it, you can steamroll a larger force. But yeah, being on the receiving end of that, that's got to be just...
So that was it. I mean, for me, that's the moment,
Yeah. Which you didn't get into one of those the night that an NVA man touched his boot, which I'm sure that Mike would love to hear about.
Yeah. What happened?
Well,
there?
we had the ambush set up, and by the way, we had a wiretap running for over an hour. Sal had climbed a telephone pole, put up the wiretap, covered the wire with mud, so anybody from the trail would never see it. And we had the ambush set up with claymores, C4 in the middle, so at 6 feet, any person would be knocked out. Everybody else is killed. Security claymores and one in the back for good luck. So we had to pull it all in after we talked to Spider. And then the trail activity picked up. Everybody's nervous now. We hear the tanks. Short while later, we hear the dogs. We moved into darkness. Just about dark as we came to a stream or a brook or something, but it was running water, had banks on about 10, 12 feet. We went in the stream for an hour at night. It was noisy, but we knew the dogs were down there. And within the water covered our noise. And I had the team go up and back, and then we put down mace and black pepper for the dogs to fuck up their noses. And then finally we went up to the bank. Team put up the RON. I'm facing the bank. Long story short, they were coming at us with hundreds of people, all with lanterns, and the dogs were coming up the mountain. They didn't realize how far up the mountain we had gotten. And that's the only thing that saved us. And so around 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 guys, NVA, go up the stream, and I'm watching them walk past.
How far away from you do you think they were?
God, I don't know, 15, 20, 25 feet.
With lanterns, though, so...
One lantern, ran out of fuel, turned around and come back. And when they walked past, my interpreter coughed.
Fucking new guy.
Yeah. That's my interpreter now. And I ain't even giving him the cough medicine, just keep the cough down. But anyway, that's another story. So I would make a long story short. Whenever the wind blew, this guy came up the hill. Wind would blow, and I'm sitting there with my feet spread, car 15 pointed.
And you're basing this off of sound, right? You can't see this guy?
Oh, yeah, you do this, it's nothing. You can feel the air, but you can't see your hand.
So we're talking pitch black.
So the guy comes up, and eventually he touched my 10R regular boot, jungle boot. I heard him go, I'm just sitting there. If he moved one more step or did anything sudden, it would have been a Arrivederci. And so he waited for the wind to move. And when the wind blew, he moved back down, and he and his buddy left. We got up at first light and went north.
So they would move with the wind.
Yeah, he was so good. He knew his...
Damn.
Oh, yeah.
That's the name of your book. That's the name of Andy's book.
Is that it?
He moved with the wind.
I like that.
Subtext with fantastic hair.
He moved with the wind. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So, like, there was a lot of the Recondo school was stood up during this time period, right?
Right.
But you guys never had the opportunity to go?
You know, I'm not sure, to be honest. We got our in-country training. It may have been the Recondo school. I just don't remember.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Some of it was like the original Recondo was, hey, you go out and do, because when you mention those training missions, the original Recondo school, which I believe started in late 60s.
No,
but they did do training.
They did the training missions.
Then they had the 1-0 school later.
Yeah,
Long Ton.
They did the live hit as part of their training in Vietnam for a part of their
the in-country
qualification.
training.
Damn.
Yeah.
And they often made contact.
Yeah.
Sure.
As part of their...
And so here's the sidebar to this story. The next day, we moved all morning, all day, up this mountain. And by near the end of the day, Sal and Fook ran into, because we were really spread out, because it was less vegetation, and they saw woodcutters. And so the woodcutters left. We left them alone because they weren't armed. They didn't bother us.
Woodcutters isn't people cutting wood?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were harvesting or doing something, and we heard them, but we wanted to get up this mountain. So at some point, we had eye contact. This is what Sal said. I never saw him.
What tools are you guys using to navigate through this terrain? Are we talking map and lens at a compass? Are you talking just relying on your local nationals?
At this point, we just wanted to get to the top of the mountain that we were on.
Yeah. No, I mean in general, though. Like, what did you guys take in the field?
Oh, yeah. No, we had a map. We'd have a target box, a 6x6, that would be cut out of a real map.
Yeah.
So if your target would be center, they would cut out the box so that if we got killed or captured, they couldn't tell anything beyond that.
No GPS, though. We're talking...
No.
I challenge anybody.
We had our compass. Well, see, now, man, I'm a city slicker. I have my little people. I go to Sal. We want to go here.
Yeah.
We're going to do this
For sure.
and we're cool, totally cool.
Mike, how would you describe the complexity of map and compass navigation in the jungle?
Oh man, it's
Almost impossible.
It's dead reckoning. You can't use you don't use a lot of terrain association at all. So a lot of it is moving literally from terrain feature to terrain feature, which could be a tree.
Yeah.
Or, as far as you could see, which anytime I've done
not
it.
far, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I look up and that's my azimuth, and then what I see, I'm walking to, getting on the other side of it, and then continued movement.
You got to do that quite often.
Yeah,
crazy.
Repeat ad nauseum.
Yeah.
Almost an impossible task.
Very impossible. Well, very impossible to stay, especially in terrain that you don't know. With a standard topographical map. I don't know what scale you guys were using, but I'm assuming
150.
150 is so standard scale for us.
Yeah.
But it's like, man, to be able to do reconnaissance in those kind of conditions and environments without the technology, because I'm trying to, in listening to your stories, I'm trying to extract all of the things that we would have that would have made that.
I'm doing the same thing. I'm doing the same
I'm
thing.
walking on a electronic GPS, a Samsung phone tethered to my forearm, and I'm like, this is easy. I can do this.
Yeah.
With overhead sensors, you probably might have fusion goggles, so you got thermal and night vision through the jungle.
Yeah.
So easy.
Like, why are these guys bitching? This is my 4-ounce Solomons, or I got a little rough spot in my shoe.
Here's your two fun little sidebars to this mission. The first night we're on the mountain, we heard Russians talking on the radio, and we heard an aircraft fly over our target. And 2 or 3 mountains away, lit up like Broadway. And it was the NVA getting a resupply from the Russians.
Wow.
And while we were on that mountain, the second sidebar is the people, the cartographers that made the map forgot a mountain. A mountain was missing because we were up. We knew what mountain we wanted to go to, but there was another mountain in the way of our objective. So
And they forgot to leave that little guy.
That's an interesting conversation between two. Like, no, dude, it's this one. It's like, no, man, it's this one. Like, fuck you, dude. That map. There's supposed to be a mountain there.
Yeah. And this is the one where, like we were talking this morning, or about the rice on my tooth.
Yeah.
One of my teeth fell apart.
Really?
In the middle of this, yeah. So I was packing it with rice.
Wow.
And then when we left under heavy enemy fire.
Yeah. And this was like standard. This is, I imagine.
Yeah, it was always, we always left under enemy fire. The only question was how much.
Is your standard SOP for reacting to contact, and especially in reconnaissance in this case, always break contact? Or,
yeah.
Or are you at all trying to flank maneuver?
This is not Ranger tactics.
Yeah, you're breaking.
Our move was to break contact, try to continue, or at least to survive, because with the jungle, you don't know how many people are behind the folks firing at you. With the Rangers, you attack your ambush, which is a rock solid tradition.
Yeah.
But in our case, we trained just the opposite, to break away.
Move,
Yes.
break away. Did you have like I know I'm asking this because I went to Ranger school as a child. I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
But we learned things like black and gold. Like you select a black and gold, which are contingency movements where you would break contact too. Like I believe it was like a standard terrain feature away and out of sight and out of sound of the enemy. Did you create your breaking contact points along the way, or did you just bug out from where you were at and you stayed on azimuth together?
The first thing was survival and to break the contact.
Yeah.
And then from there, because we were compromised, to be on the radio. The mission's over. I mean, a lot of times headquarters would do break contact and continue mission, which is like, Colonel, if you get your dumb ass down here with me, if you want to do that, we will do that. But right now I'm the 1-0 and I'm calling a prairie fire emergency because we're in contact.
Wow.
So then you go from surveillance to survival.
Got it. So making contact meant compromise,
Finito.
which a criteria to send in the
Right.
Wow. So
yeah.
heavy on air assets.
Absolutely. Without the air assets, man, I'm fertilizer and layouts a long time ago.
Wow, man.
Has there ever been? Has Russia ever been open about how much involvement they had in that area? I'm curious if they had their own version of MACV-SOG operating in the areas that you were, and if so, how many people were actually there?
No, there's an old YouTube out there where the Russians had their own Vietnam Secret War reunion, And the numbers they put out
on
there.
YouTube.
Yeah, on YouTube.
Sweet.
Now, so this came out now maybe 15 years ago. And it came out, and it's just, they were mostly cannon cockers, anti-aircraft folks. Now, we do know from fact we had Marine Corps gunships that saw Russians in the DMZ, and we had other recon teams from Khartoum that ran into Russians further south. We ran into Chinese that were bigger, and other teams ran into some Chinese that were there. And, of course, we had the Cuban dude that was talking to Lynn Black. So there were foreign advisors there, but the majority of these guys were cannon cockers. And, here's another sidebar from Operation Tailwind. The NVA by 1970 had the ACAC, which is like World War II. When the bombers are flying, you see the ACAC in the air, and anti-aircraft explosions, and the shrapnel goes out for the aircraft.
Yeah.
Well, the helicopters, when they went in to the target and when they came back, were getting ACAC in the air. And one of the medics on that, he was up in one of the stands 15 years later. And he's up there in the capacity of some diplomatic service, but he had his SF pin on. And they're at a briefing, and some young Russian lieutenant comes up to him and says, I see your SF thing. Were you in SOG? Yes. The bottom line was, this lieutenant's dad was on a Russian ACAC unit in Laos, that probably was the one trying to shoot down Doc Paget.
Insane.
Small little sidebar. Yeah.
So you guys signed 20-year NDAs.
Yes.
What did you tell your friends and family that you were doing in Vietnam?
We were busy, very busy, and we earned our paycheck. And but remember, this when you came home in 1970, nobody really gave, other than your family and a couple of friends. They were like, "You're glad you're home. What was it like?" Well, it was pretty bad. We had good days and bad days. Okay, you want a beer?
Yeah.
Cool.
These are deer hunter days. Remember that movie?
Yes.
Deer Hunter? Oh, man.
But even inside of the Green Beret community, how many of them even knew about MACV-SOG? Was this something that was a closely held secret even inside of the community?
Not too closely held. I mean, like the guys who were with me in training group, the Camo guys, they all said, go to an A camp first.
Yeah.
Do not volunteer for projects. That's where people die.
Interesting.
And so, yeah. And, life in an A camp in Vietnam was nasty.
Yeah.
I would rather run SOG missions any day than be in an A camp because you're just static. You're waiting for them to come get your ass.
So when did you first start hearing about SOG from people other than those that were actually in the unit? When did it actually peek its head out into public recognition?
I started doing a couple articles for Soldier of Fortune magazine. But I had to use a nom de guerre because the newspaper I worked for at the time, had they known I was writing for Soldier of Fortune, they would have fired my ass in the New York City second. So I had a nom de guerre for that, and I started doing stories like in the mid-'80s.
Okay.
And so those were the first stories about it. And Soldier of Fortune had done an independent thing on SOG. So that's the first time it surfaced that I saw it. And then Dave Meyer did a book, but it was called Fiction, The Dying Place, which is just a brilliant book. And he starts off with this guy on the first page. He's got a guy in his gun sight getting ready to kill him. And so that was the first book. And then John Plaster.
The Dying Place.
Yeah. The Dying Place, David Meyer. And the Plaster started working on his books, and he came out with his first book. That was the first nonfiction book. And then John had also worked with Operation Tailwind when CNN and Time Magazine did their erroneous, inaccurate, scandalous stories. There were suits, law action, and then John learned more about SOG itself. And so he helped to get and worked with the Army brass to get a PUC that was awarded to SOG. And that was awarded April 4th, 2000 at Fort Bragg. So that was the first time officially, other than the litigation, that they said, this is SOG. We were there. We were acknowledged. They had a little service. Everybody got your coin. You went home.
Wow.
I mean,
then John's books came out.
Correct me if I'm wrong, when you were getting your briefing where they're saying no notes, no diaries, your recollection of dates is fucking startling to me. How do you, how did you retain this knowledge? I'll be honest, I forget what we had for breakfast this morning.
Me too.
So it's it's like
Fast
who had the
is
salad,
easy.
me or you?
yeah. But I mean, I look back through my career, which I mean, it's I feel like at this point we're comparing oranges to bowling balls.
Yeah.
And I can't remember dates of operations. Maybe a month, maybe a year, but there's a good chance I'm going to be wrong. Your recollection of these exact dates is fantastic.
Well, two things. When I started working on the Soldier of Fortune stuff, we learned these. I learned about the Special Operations Association, which was formed by Recon guys and Hatchet Force, and then it was expanded to all the air assets, the helicopter units that just saved our ass every day. Then we brought in the SPAD pilots too, offered the F4s, but you know how Air Force jet jockeys are. Okay, fine. But so those were unions. So we got to meet the guys. So when I do a story, I would talk to guys.
Oh, that collective knowledge.
And then when I worked on Across the Fence, my first book, which by the way, I couldn't have done it without my wife because we had 4 teenagers and a newborn in the house. She goes, "You got to write the book." So with her support, we did it. But going through the interviews and now talking about it again, it comes back and you work on it because I was able to interview all the guys that were there. Some guys have better memories than me. But now, thanks to the books with Jocko podcast, talking about it and going back, trying to get the factual patterns on these things.
Have you heard, Mike, that John himself is doing SOGcasts?
I saw it. Yeah, I already subscribed to it. Yeah.
Hell yes.
So awesome.
Yes.
So awesome.
Well, thank you.
Well, what's cool is it's the same experience that we're experiencing now, just in a different form factor, right? Because with a latter time period of catching up. So, when I see all of the guys, especially the aviators, that are a huge component to SOG, getting them out and seeing if they're alive and having the conversations to put pieces together, it's so important to do it now. I mean, the time is now. Right, we don't have time on our hands, and it's not going to be on our side. We have to get these conversations had. How when you wrote your first book, or even did the Soldier of Fortune thing, did you have a hard time? Were people like talking to you about like, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, or was there any? I mean, it's less popular as far as numbers wise. I can imagine it was more narrow, but did you have a problem with that?
There is always a few people, but basically it'd be like you pretend you're talking to an officer. Fuck off, I'm doing it.
Yeah. No offense, Andy.
Yeah, nothing personal,
no offense,
sir.
bro.
Yeah.
Sir.
You can call me sir if you want to.
We loved the few good officers that were out there. I'm sure you would have been in that category. So
you never know, jury's out.
Yeah. Hey, after 17 years, man, you earned your spurs.
That's not necessarily
White House
true.
liaison right there.
Yeah. And don't forget, we're not
Liaison
leaving
to the urinal, perhaps.
By the way, we're not leaving today without you talking to me a little bit about Pakistan.
Oh yeah, Pakistan.
If you can.
I can. Yeah. Pakistan was
at some point,
shithole.
Because that's why we're here, man. We're
the
talking
passing
about
of the
stuff.
torch, if you will.
No,
Indeed.
I didn't do
the
anything
next
compared
generation.
to
You kidding?
you guys' generation.
But see, you thought about it though. You thought about that experience, and this is the great thing about SF, and even with the SEALs, that when the people that are doing the operations talk about it, they're always looking for a better way to do business.
Yeah.
How to improve it. Now you've got stuff today. You got more lawyers over there than you have combat troops.
At
Which we didn't have
times,
to
it
deal
seems
with.
like
And the
it.
rules of engagement are far worser.
I was going to ask that. What rules of engagement were you operating under?
Well, we're supposed to get fired at first, but once we went across the fence, was fuck the rules.
Yeah.
Who told you need to get fired at first? Because that's idiotic.
Of course, but that's just backyard bureaucrats, and this is in country stuff. I mean, they had bad incidents. You have young soldiers or young Marines that would fire up people, and we had cases like one time, our Idaho came out of a target, and they landed at one of the Marine air bases on one of the hilltops, and the Marines came up to our South Vietnamese and started giving them shit. And
that's not going to fly.
Yeah. And so Hep spoke really good English, and he told them to know on certain terms. And I forgot. I was there for that. But most of the shouting was done by the time I got, and when I heard, I went over and corrected the situation. But we had a recon team that came into contact on an in-country drill with Marines, and they fired them up. The Marines opened fire on our guys.
Oh, fuck.
And we fired back.
Call that, what would that be, a green on blue? That's a Crayola palette you don't want to fuck with.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that.
And then earlier we were talking about the team for PSYOPs where all the Americans are killed, the Vietnamese E&E to the border, and when 3 break out, 1 was killed by a Marine because they looked like they were South Vietnamese carrying guns.
Wow.
And the Marines didn't think about, well, they're carrying CAR-15s.
Yeah.
What was your, I mean, in the wars that Mike and I fought in, they talked about Geneva Convention, expectations of people that we would detain and likely expectations, at least, of what we could expect if captured ourselves. What was the expectation if you guys were to be captured?
I had the last hand grenade right here. And that's it. I'm not going to be a POW. By that time, we'd heard the stories of horror.
What kind of stuff? I mean, I'm not familiar with the stories. What kind of things were happening?
Oh, they started with the Navy and Air Force pilots that were POWs up north.
Gotcha.
That were shot down.
Hanoi Hilton type stuff?
Correct. And they were just treated wretchedly and inhumanely, of course. And so we heard that. And then, of course, Nick Rowe, who was a Green Beret, captured early in the war. He was captured, tried to escape several times, finally did escape. And we heard stories from him, not directly, but stuff that came through channels. So myself and McIntyre and a few of the other guys, we all just carried the last hand grenade. If we got wounded, if we're going to go, we're going to take as many of these assholes with us as we can.
It's kind of a power flex.
It is. Colonel Nick Rowe, he wrote the book 5 Years to Freedom. Incredible book.
Oh, yeah.
But he started our schoolhouse. It probably started the Air Force schoolhouse as well that spun off the Army schoolhouse because I know our schoolhouse, which is ran by Special Warfare Center, that started teaching right after Nick Rowe's experience, all the guys that went through the pipeline, but then that broke off into different sections, which included the Air Force and JPR-8, Joint Personnel Recovery, and all the stuff. But that experience with you at that time, nobody knew except for the handed down information, and you guys are learning every single day. I can imagine, because I know when we were in the GWAT, we show up, our kit's all screwed up, right? Everything we're doing is like, what are we doing? And then you look at us now, it's completely different.
Yeah.
And then you take it back to that time period, and you guys were inventing warfare because it's very different from World War II and Germany.
And here's our other lesson. When McIntyre and I went through our commo training, we got recycled. I had hardest time getting up to speed for Morse code. The guy who brought us in on weekends and at night, worked with us day and night on this stuff, was Paul Villarosa, SFC. He had 3 tours of duty. We loved the guy, and he was a commo whiz. He could send and receive at the same time.
Wow.
And he used the bug. He was super fast. Anyway, he trained us. He earned our respect. We get to Vietnam. During or shortly after our top secret briefing, we learned that Paul Villarosa died on the first mission, SOG mission, out of FOB-4 in Da Nang, which was the January 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, 1968.
Wow. And
additionally, what they did to him, they fried him, literally, with a napalm, the fire, the flamethrower. Thank you. And they forced one other American to stay alive to watch it.
Wow.
When they fried him and they killed another team member, some of the indigenous E&E, but I forget who the American was. But when he came back, they took him right to Saigon, and that was part of the PSYOPs that we were up against. So we knew what happened to Paul, who was our hero, and our hero who had been 3 tours of duty is fried in a target.
Yeah, so they're not following.
You talk about PSYOPs. Oh, no.
None of the rules, Geneva Convention, nothing.
Yeah. First of all, everybody in America doesn't realize today that the first rule is you will lie. You will say anything you want to the media, because the media will report it that way, but it will not be the truth. Mm. And that's the way it was then. They said that they had no combat troops and else, lying through their ass.
Yeah.
And today they lie.
Yeah. What was your relationship with your indigenous guys? I grew up as a Green Beret in many countries building rapport, and my favorite experiences were working with Indige. I posted a picture the other day on Instagram.
How many sets of Indige do you have? I only have one. You probably got how many?
I got like 10 sets.
How
but
many?
they're all
I
solid.
love the term sets.
Oh yeah.
One of my favorite sets was in Konar province. I had civilians that we transitioned into Afghan special forces. This is before Afghan National Army.
Probably Kunaris.
Yeah.
Was that right?
Super, like
just locals, yeah.
Locals that were just super pumped and motivated.
Yeah.
They wanted to be there. They were hungry for it. We paid well. But I posted a picture of me on an op. It was a long range operation in a place called Kocha Valley, which was Osama bin Laden's old stomping grounds. We had an MH-47 that was shot down. All kinds of crazy stuff happened. And I'm smoking a cigarette, and it was is a blue box. It's a white and blue box. It's like pine or something like that. Like you could take a puff of that cigarette and blow it into a napkin or something, and it was just black tar. Just disgusting. And I don't smoke. I'm not a smoker.
But that day,
somebody asked me. They said, well, "I didn't know you smoked." And I was like, to build rapport with these dudes, I would do anything. Like I hung out with them. I drank tea. I wouldn't do anything.
I was just going to have some interesting questions for you.
Thursday night, I was done.
You noticed where the question would come from.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
nothing personal, sir.
I did serve in the Navy.
It was a seaman. But did you have a good rapport with them? And then what happened to those relationships after you guys left?
Well, the first part of the question, it was spectacular.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so fun. That's why when the tour of duty ended, I felt guilty as hell leaving.
Yeah.
And of course, it helped to have Lynn Black and the Frenchman go on the team. And they ran a shitload of missions the 5 months I was gone.
Yeah, they were in good hands.
Good hands, yeah. And and likewise, the Indigenous would take great care of them. And so when I came back, it was like old homecoming. So awesome. It was great. The rapport was, but I had to earn it. Yeah. Like, when Spider Parks introduced me to the team, I go in, and the counterpart was Sal, who was like 98 pounds, soaking wet, 50 pounds of heart. And he looks at me, he goes to the interpreter, Hep, he goes, he's too tall, his feet are too big, and he looks stupid.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And that was the assessment. So this is June, early June. Yes. I met Sal, and maybe even at the end of May. So it wasn't until October 7th on that mission.
You proved yourself.
Did it there.
Wow.
And and the most significant moment was we're on the King Bee flying home now, right? I look at Sal and he gave me the nod.
That's it.
That was it.
That's all you got.
I mean, I would take that moment in time.
That's so amazing.
Oh yeah. But it took a while.
Yeah.
And he had me pretty well accurately assessed. Feet are too big, look stupid,
Yeah. And Sal was the head of the Indige
He was our 01. He was the team leader for the Vietnamese side. So he and Hep, when the team got several members lost, they recruited the young people, brought them in.
Yeah, train them
up.
Yeah.
And we trained together, and they took care of them, and we took care of the American side. And when it came to the mission, everything came from us. We talked to Sal, what we wanted to do, who's going to do what. And
He'd make it happen.
He would make it happen.
What happened after?
Well, April 30th, 1975, one of those most saddest days of my life.
Wow.
Because that's the day the Saigon fell.
Yeah.
And just sitting there going like, fuck me to tears. All of our people that saved my life, the King Bee pilots, the team members, they're still there. And then Indecent Interval came out when Frank Snepp did the story on how the CIA did not destroy their documents. And the NVA had full run of their documents about this top secret operations. So they had the names and the addresses of all the people.
Fuck.
On top of that. Oh, yeah.
Did they wind up hunting down all those
Some
guys?
did. Now, like Sal was just so savvy. He went to Saigon and blended in.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how he did. I never talked to Sal after I left.
Really?
Yeah, sadly, the only person I talked to was Hep.
Have you ever tried to go back and see if any of those guys are around?
Nope. Well, first of all, I was just a simple reporter going from paycheck to paycheck, no extra grass around. And then got involved to have my family. So between the family and work and living paycheck to paycheck, it's just you go on with life.
Yeah. Man, I always wonder about.
And they're
my
always in
Indij.
the back of my head. So the good news with HEP was the History Channel did a story on SOG called Suicide Missions. It came out in 2000, and in it, the picture from across the fence was there. I had it, and long story short, HEP's nephew saw it, called the History Channel. They called me. I called him. He was 9 miles from my house.
What?
And he gave me HEP's phone number, and I called up HEP in Houston, and we finally got together. Happiest day of my life.
We got to see if those guys are still around.
No, they're gone.
Sal. Are they gone?
Yeah, we buried HEP 3 years ago.
What about Sal?
No, we lost him on Valentine's Day 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay.
And then Doti Kwong, who was with Lynn Black on October the 5th, one of the staunch NVA with Cowboy, we recruited him to Idaho, and we lost Kwong, I think it was 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I heard about this all from HEP.
Yeah.
He was able to keep, and we sent money over. We tried to get Sal and them back. But between the corruption and, we're just poor soldiers.
There's a guy named Omar in Texas who's a truck driver. This guy's a truck driver, and his brother's a truck driver. He was one of the original operators that we trained in the Iraqi counter-terrorism force. So this is the closest thing that I think modern Green Berets had to MACV-SOG, which was the Commanders in Extremist Force, which I was in, is a specialized direct action special reconnaissance unit that works with specialized special missions units. And they're like think of it as like the regional SWAT team in the area that responds to crisis responses and then hands it off to the tier 1 units. One of the original missions that we got tasked for is take a bunch of Iraqis, pull them out of Iraq, train them in Jordan, train them to be specialized operators, and then go in small units and conduct counterterrorism operations in Iraq. And we did that in 2003. And so from 2003, 2004, all the way through the GWAT until 2014, we operated with the Iraqi counterterrorism force. Every Green Beret that rotated, that was a SIF member, and including task force that were using them at the tail end of our part of the GWAT in Iraq up until 14, we were doing that. Omar was an operator. His brother was an operator, and they left Iraq to live the American dream and stand up here. And this fall, I'm trying to get Evan involved for Black Rifle Coffee because this fall I'm going back to Iraq.
Really?
I got 5 trips to Iraq, but I'm going to go back there for a 6th trip to document the Iraqi counterterrorism force and all they accomplished.
Because they're hot shit.
If it wasn't for the ICTF that were started by Green Berets, they wouldn't have destroyed ISIS in Mosul or
really
Erbil. They're the sole reason. There's documentaries out about it, but they're the sole reason that they half of the ICTF that we trained up are dead in the fight against ISIS. Wow. About 10% of them we lost in combat operations overseas. But I want to go back, interview the main dudes that stood them up, that helped that. I have 4 rotations with them, or 3 rotations with them, and then tell their story, but also highlight guys like Omar, who's still alive. We're still young. We're still able to tell this. Because I hate to hear that these guys that played such a significant role, because we've done it. We've left these guys behind in Afghanistan and Iraq,
and
all
we're
over the
doing
world.
it again
and again. We'll keep
Even
repeating
the Wall
it.
Street Journal had a hell of a story yesterday on it.
It's insane.
Oh my!
It's insane.
It's a heartbreak.
It is heartbreaking. It hurts bad to know that those dudes. I mean, even the Afghans that I served with, they were with Robert Miller, who was a 3rd group guy who got the Medal of Honor posthumously. Right. I worked with those Indij, handing them over to Rob, who was an 18 Bravo, just like me, and he got killed fighting uphill against the enemy. But some of our Indij that were there got killed as well, and those guys are still there. I mean, they live war. Their life. They don't get a rotation out. They don't get the high five out. And there needs to be more done about that.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing, just getting back to the Indij for a while, there's much more of an intimacy. Nothing sexual or anything, but just that they're closer.
Yeah.
When you play poker, the guy sitting next to you have his hand around your shoulder or on your leg.
Yeah.
there's nothing fancy smancy about it, but it was really close. And I really enjoyed that. My second tour of duty, I ate my meals at night in the indigenous mess hall with the team.
Yep. Yeah.
And that was just great fun. And then I left camp suddenly because me and the CEO had this disagreement. And that night we had a party, drank, everybody passed out eventually. Hep was the last one awake, my interpreter, right? And so we're outside. It must be 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And he goes, "My," and they never say Meyer, it's My, you need anything else? I said, "No, Hep, we're done." He laid down and passed out right there in the sand.
Wow.
But that's how loyal he was, right to the end, you know. So I picked him up, dusted him off, carried him into the team room, put him in bed, and then left. I had 2 weeks left in country, then I deer roast out.
So you never saw him again?
No, I saw Hep,
Yeah.
but nobody else on the team.
Gosh, man.
When you left after your first rotation there, did you know you'd be back for a second?
No, I didn't know what the future held.
Did you want to go back for a second?
Yeah, I did, but I didn't. At that time, I was engaged to a gal, and the way things worked out, I told her I was going to go back. She ended things, and I said, fine. So let's go. And went back. And just seeing the team again, seeing Lynn, and being back where Special Forces belong, which is doing the hardest missions, getting out there, mixing up with the bad guys to try to help have an impact somewhere.
How was your transition out of that life?
I lucked out. You know, when I went back, I had my family was there. They've been praying for me from day one. Grandmom Stryker. I'm convinced that one of the reasons why I'm survived is because of the prayers by divine intervention, like what Sal said, you know. And my friends from church were there. Went right back to school because I had to I flunked out.
Yeah.
So I had to make up the classes, and then I wanted to get my degree. So I figured to go back to school, and that was my mission, to really focus on that transition. And it gnawed at me, feeling guilty about leaving behind a team. Occasionally guys would come through Trenton, like Eldon Bargewell. When he was heading to OCS, he stopped by and we had a meal. He goes, "You thought about coming back?" And Lynn and I talked about trying to get a job with the agency, but then Lynn landed a great job at a TV studio. He's getting paid tons of money for his artwork. And I just kind of went with the flow. And we ran a POW MIA center at college. We started that for over 2 years, selling the POW MIA bracelets, the bumper stickers, raising awareness about our POWs.
What year was that?
71 through 73 until they came home.
So probably not a popular year to be selling those things, though.
Oh, no.
Crazy.
Oh, yeah. But again, there were those who didn't like it, but nobody was opposition enough. They would go to the administration and say, we put this thing in the student newspaper office, and we had the POW MIA Concern Center. Whenever we get the story out there, we worked on it to raise the concern about the MIAs. I mean, as of today, we still have 50 Green Berets that are missing in action in Laos alone. Then you throw in 80-plus aviators that died supporting them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, our SOA reunion this year is going to acknowledge all of the KIAs that are still MIA. It's a big number.
Yeah, it's huge.
Think about your war. I mean, you had 1 or 2 people that are MIA, and everybody went shit blind until they got them.
Yeah.
And today we talk about ours.
Yeah, still at 1,500 or went over 1,000.
1,584 as of today.
Wow.
In Vietnam?
So for the Vietnam War, that includes all of Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia,
China.
A few in Thailand, and there's a couple in China were aviators, I think.
Wow.
How much time from your second rotation until you started school and dove back into the after of your military career?
Next month. I came home in May. Of course, I came home in May. My dad got me a job driving school buses for some pocket change. And the first week, my first drive is I got a school bus full of black children, taking them into a white neighborhood in Chambersburg, in Trenton, which was an Italian section of town. It was part of the integration. And we got stoned and rocked. Windows broken on the school bus.
Jeez.
And
Holy fuck.
Straight out of Vietnam to that.
Oh, yeah. And me without my car 15, man. Because I saw a couple of people I really wanted to hurt.
Wow. I just came from Trenton. Trenton's not the best place in the world today, even today.
What are you doing in Trenton? Well, yeah, things have denigrated a little.
I trained the state SWAT team, or state patrol SWAT team.
New Jersey State Police?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Good guys.
Oh, yeah.
Good guys. And they're getting it. It's like a war there.
For sure.
They're busy in that place.
Oh, yeah.
So when did you start telling your family exactly what it is?
Not until the book came out.
I was going to say.
Wow.
So what was their reaction to what old Tilt was up to in Vietnam?
Well, that's kind of funny. Mom never talked about it. I don't know if my mother ever read it because it was so hard, particularly when I went back. When I told her I was going back, I was out of leave time. So I had gone down to the Pentagon, got my orders cut, cleared base, came home, said, hey, I'm going back to Nam. And Mom was really heartbroken. But Dad just said, okay, let me know if you need anything. And went back. And that was really hard. That was the hardest part about going back. And so after my little brother knew, Dave and I talk all the time. So even there, it's like he read the book first, then the questions would come off the book.
Yeah, I bet.
Across the fence.
What
but
year?
Until that point.
What year did you write the book?
It came out in 2003.
In 2003. So
Yeah, so it came out.
30 plus years.
Yeah.
And then I redid it.
You should know the math on that, Mike. You're the quant.
I know. I got it.
A nice round number, 33. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so Dave and I talked, and we still do to this day, my little brother who's taller than me. And then we did the expanded edition of Across the Fence about 10 years later. We threw in 50 pictures, 3 different chapters, including the one where the Frenchman got shot in the back 4 times and lived to talk about it.
Wow.
He had 4 rounds go through his back, through the radio, through his fatigue, and each round broke the skin on his back and ran out of energy.
Wow.
Put him right on his face. And Doug goes, I jumped up. I wanted to fight those commie bastards. And they left. They all thought he was dead.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
And he had his pants taped. So that night he's in the shower. He goes, his back hurt. And they realized that the rounds had broke the skin on his back. And he threw the 4 slugs out in the sand.
Wow.
I told him if that had been me, I would have kept at least 1.
At least 1.
For sure.
Oh, yeah. Just for who knows what.
Good God.
Oh, yeah.
When you were part of MACV-SOG in that year that you were over there, how many operations do you think that you went on?
Well, in my mind, when you're going into the LZ and getting shot out 3 times, twice a day, that's almost a mission.
I'm going to go ahead and count that one.
That's counted.
Yeah, okay.
And if you did it in the evening and the morning, I'm going to give you 2 on that.
You're big heart.
Yeah.
I lost count.
Do you have any estimate?
I'll have to think about that.
And it sounds like it would be hundreds at least.
Oh, no, it wouldn't be that high because just the turnaround time. There were a few where we were actually on the ground for several days, like that one there. We're socked in. The coldest time of my life was in the DMZ. We get inserted. Again, there's questionable weather. We go in, and my point man, when he came off the King Bee, almost broke his ankle. And so we went in with 2 King Bees. So I think Soam was on the second one. I forget now. But he really hurt his ankle, and we couldn't move. And so I called for an extraction to come back and get him, and we would just run without him. Well, in that short period of time, we got socked in, and they wouldn't come back. There was a lieutenant flying Covey with our FAC, and he said, no, you guys continue the mission. And I said, well, one guy can't move. We're not moving anywhere without him. The weather closed in, and we were on the ground 5 days and 5 nights in the DMZ when it rained.
How much food would you guys take with you on an operation?
Usually carry rations for 5.
Okay.
But in this case, we cut it a little bit short, figuring that the weather's bad. We've been shot out of so many targets.
Yeah.
What about water? What about water? Are you procuring off the land?
Right. Usually
purification tablets?
Well, just try to have the salt, the purification pills.
Iodine.
Right.
Probably.
Yeah. Exactly. So
tastiest water you'll ever have.
Indeed. And it had that. Yeah. So we try, depending on where we were going, because usually in Laos there would be a stream or something we get water out of, and even there we'd be very careful, So we just carry 1 canteen for water. We had the LURPs, which were dehydrated rations, and so you put the water in, wrap it up, put it next to your body, and a few hours later it would have body heat.
Heat it up.
Yeah, and then eat it that way. And then when we ate, they had indigenous rations too, which were rice and then they had shrimp, fish, and things like that with special flavoring. And again, these were developed by our Special Operations Department, where when they designed them specifically for indigenous troops, they put vitamins in there. So it helped them with their health.
Yeah.
And so that would be just a bag with rice with flavor, and you mix it up a little bit.
Yeah. What was your lowest point during that year there with MACV-SOG?
That mission where the boot was touched. Because that next day when we went straight up the mountain all day, and right near the end, before we got to the top, after we had contact with the woodcutters, and there was no shots fired. I mean, Sal had gone out with Son, I think it was, and they had seen him, and the woodcutter saw them. So they went that away, and then we went more to the right around that mountain, trying to get to the top before dark. And we had been on the move since first light, and it was getting around maybe 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And we took a break, and when I went to get up, I fell down. Literally just fell and went on my face. And I was just sitting there for a minute, lying there going like, oh, man, I just want to roll over and go to sleep. But I also knew that every eye on that team was on my dumb ass. So I went to get up again. It happened again. Went down, I hurt my bad knee, landed on my face, and I'm there, terra firma with that shit on my face. And that was my worst moment right there, because I just really wanted to go to sleep. But I knew that I was the 1-0.
Yeah.
And just got my ass up. And we finally got to the top of the mountain at last light, thanks to Sal. He got us up there.
What was your most rewarding moment in that year that we were there?
There's a few. Having successful wiretaps, and again, you know how it is with the CIA. You give them 10,000 things, you never hear anything unless you fuck up, and they want to blame you for the fuck up. Okay, that's the way the CIA operates when it comes to us.
Mike, do you have anything to add?
No, that's true.
No, yeah.
I've been there. Yeah. That's why I'm not there.
Yeah, you got integrity.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass.
Oh yeah, and there were. We had that mission on Thanksgiving Day in '68. The mission was find 3 NVA divisions. The 1st, the 3rd, and the 7th NVA divisions were MIA, literally. And we had done a whole intel study that night, had photographs for the first time, which I'd never seen before. High elevation photos. Maybe it came from blackbirds or U-2s. I assumed they were blackbirds. Anyways, we picked out where they were. We had a Thanksgiving dinner before we went to the target. We go in, we're on the ground maybe an hour or two, walked right into a base camp. Fire still lit. One still had a pot on the fire. And what we figured out later was that one had just left and another one was coming in. So the point element and the tail security all came at us. Now we're in Cambodia. Much more wide open, 200, 300, 400 feet you could see. And the image I'll take to my grave is the NVA running at port arms towards us. And we had to make it back to the LZ. So we were doing our rotations.
Yep.
And then the Claymore mines, put them down. Then we used the Claymore mines with a 5-second fuse as we continue to move back. And then the 20th SOS Air Force, the Green Hornets, got there in time. With the gun runs, the 5 seconds on our Claymores, we got back and got out under just right the last second. And we went back, had a second Thanksgiving dinner, got back to base, had a third Thanksgiving dinner.
That's how you do that.
Indeed, SOP.
Have you ever used a Claymore mic that had a 5-second delay?
No, I don't think I have.
No, that shit's not authorized.
Yeah. Oh, it's not, right? Yeah, there's a reason for that, right?
I'm pretty sure the minimum is like 30 seconds on the time fuse because there's a plus or minus factor with that stuff.
We did get in trouble for wiring Claymores to the front of our vehicles. Like we had the GMVs in Afghanistan, and we had them on the front. And
cool.
We took a picture during, it was actually, what do they call those pictures where you send them to headquarters and they give you a thumbs up? It's storyboards, right?
Yes.
So we gave them a storyboard, and it was us doing an op, and we had Claymores rigged on the front because if you got into a situation where you had even breaking in contact, you could at least clack off the front end of your vehicle directionally towards the bad guys, front towards the enemy, and then break contact. And they were like, you can go to jail for that. We're like, oh, what? That's not a thing?
Well, see,
it's crazy.
And that misses what I call the Jocko mission. Because Jocko goes, He says, you found him. I said, yeah, that's a Jocko mission. The good news is I found him. The bad news is we found him.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, right?
It's a double-edged sword. You guys did the Australian pill. I saw on the Discovery Channel.
Oh, hell yeah.
That's what you guys are known for. The Australian pill, which is where you like open fire and then you break contact and the Discovery Channel. That's all you guys do. That's your thing, right?
I do that everywhere. I do that inside of hallways, in rooms, actually. That's
With
how
bananas?
I clear rooms. Sometimes with bananas. No, you're in a staggered file.
Yeah.
And everybody goes to their field of fire, and it's just the first guy shoots to start with, runs back, and then everybody just peels back.
Yeah.
It's fancy.
I noticed when he said that,
Wow.
you pegged into that. You were like, oh, yeah, I know, we know that. I've done it before.
Ours wasn't as sophisticated as we're just linear going back.
So it's
center
one
peel.
guy
Yeah.
opens up and then rolls out.
Yeah.
The
Right.
next guy, yeah.
Traditional center peel.
Center peel.
And
That's
then
correct.
we had our M79 guy, and then Bubba and I used our M79s too. So we'd fire off the Car 15, fire off the M79 round, and reload during the peel.
God, I
Did you
really
use
appreciate
auto?
that.
Full auto
In
on
the beginning,
car?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then after
20
that,
rounds goes quick on full
I was
auto. Yeah,
gone.
you're done.
Gone.
well, we were told that the 20 rounds in 2 seconds.
Wow.
I'd be surprised if it took that long, to be
Yeah,
honest.
it's probably not, more like a second and a half. But
Yeah.
but that to this day, just thinking about that firepower, so like, oh my God. We never had 30 round mags.
Did you
like
ever
guys.
feel like you were outgunned with 7.62 by 39 in the jungles? Like, did you want more? And what grain bullet were you guys using? Do you remember?
I couldn't tell you. I go to S4, give me bullets, and they did.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know. But no, never felt on a gun. The car, and that
some
baby
work.
on full. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So at that time, what was the manufacturer? It was Steiner, Colt Steiner.
I think so.
Well, ours had the Colt emblem on it.
Armalite
Yeah.
had some Car 15s as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time period.
Well, there's a whole book now. It's called the AR-15 by Larry, and then James Wepley. But they have a huge book on it, and they have all the history of the Car 15s.
Yeah. You guys were the first unit in Vietnam to use the Car 15, right?
Right, and the Air Force had them before we did. The pararescue men.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, the Air Force gets everything first.
Sometimes.
Interesting.
So yeah, in this case, they had them.
Times have changed.
Yeah. Well, the pararescue is still outstanding troops, man.
Oh,
Those
yeah.
guys are just amazing.
Spectacular for
God.
sure.
Well, you in one of your podcasts, you're talking about the 53s, the CH-53s.
Deltas, yeah.
Yeah. So I did the last op in 2008 of one of the 53s that we were told historically and significantly was used during your time period during
Really?
SOG missions. Yeah. They actually
Is this just a 2-engine version instead of 3? Because the new ones had 3.
Yeah, it was
correct?
a 2. It was a 2.
Whoa.
Because Jocko had mentioned it, but you used the 53s as well.
Is that right?
But
Yeah.
these ones in Iraq,
In training.
we were landing on the X on these like front door, like right in the middle of the thicket, and we had used them for I think one because they were flown by Marines,
Right.
and we used them for one rotation. And the last flight I remember we did an op where we were very successful, and they said the lineage on this bird they did MACV-SOG missions during Vietnam.
Whoa.
And I was like, what? I couldn't believe it, man. I was like in the bird, like this is amazing. Like I get to fly in this bird that was infilling or exfilling MACV-SOG guys during Vietnam. Exciting.
Well, we talked to the door gunners who talked about how they go back to base at night and they would use beer cans to plug up the bullet holes on those CH-53s.
I believe it.
I believe it too.
Well, I noticed you guys are doing a lot of drinking. So our era,
That's the Marines. We provided them with a cold beer.
because you guys could drink. There was no general order number
one, which is
Yeah.
no alcohol in theater. That was our general order number
Yeah.
one.
No.
Strictly adhered to at all times.
You guys could burn it down. I mean, you guys.
We had our clubhouse, man.
God
And
damn
then
it.
at one point, in fact, I just learned this little tidbit from a guy that ran Recon who became the club manager. And when he took over at the end of '68, he was $25,000 in debt from the club somehow. So he went out, made these deals, wheeled and dealed, got all these expensive liquors and things, bought it at base price, and then sold it to the Air Force and the Marines and anybody nearby FOB1. And within 2 months, he made up all the money, so we had a profit.
Nice.
Oh yeah,
I like it.
And some of our guys were very big drinkers.
You didn't do a lot of drinking downrange.
I've heard about it.
I
heard stories.
In all honesty, I got drunk once. That was before mission, and I never drank. I wanted to be awake
For sure.
Yeah, I was the same.
If we got hit at night, it's like I want to be ready.
Yeah,
I never toyed with any of that. If we had some downtime due to weather, perhaps we would watch Band of Brothers and have cocktails and Ambien.
that's it.
Classic
That's it.
cautionary tale
That's
and
it.
mix.
Yeah.
John, how much of your experiences in Vietnam, how much of an impact did they have on your life going forward? And I asked through the lens of my dad. One of the reasons I first came to Montana, we lived in Missoula when I was very, very young.
Yeah.
Like I remember it snowed and I got in trouble for throwing snowballs at cars and shit.
You too.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that's what boys do. But my mom basically gave my dad the ultimatum. You will go work on yourself and fix yourself or I'm out, and the kids are coming as well. In his experience, I mean, again, Brownwater Navy, the things that he was tasked with doing, hugely different than the things that you were doing. And I would describe your experiences as very intimate with your enemy, the proximity, going into their backyard. Similar in a lot of ways, I think that the units that Mike and I came from, you're going to the place where they would maybe least expect you, where they may feel the most comfortable. It's very upfront and in your face. Did you notice any impact on your life, things that you needed to work through based off your experiences in Vietnam?
Well, you missed the adrenaline more than anything.
Yeah.
And so you wind up doing little things like in the middle of a snowstorm doing 120 miles an hour, because there's a couple of highways where there's lighting. So when you're doing 120, you can see the snow in the back. It's really cool.
Wow. That's a new one. I'll
An
try
inverted
that.
snowstorm?
Yeah. So it's like
Base
just
jumping.
trying to, yeah. And I don't know, I missed that part of it. And of course the guys and the Vietnamese feeling guilty all the time, but just try to get on with life. And there were, just other things that were going on between school, a social life a little bit, and it was able to move forward. Now, I thought it was pretty cool and squared away. But I went to a family party maybe 10, 12 years ago, and I heard somebody talk to my sister. She goes, "What was John like when he came home?" He was pretty messed up. So I trust my sister.
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah. I trust my sister more than I do me on something like that. Maybe talk to Linda. She might give you a better scoop.
Did you feel it internally, though? And I asked that because I struggle to remember who I was when I was 18 when I joined the military.
Right.
And people will ask me, do you feel different post your military service than you did going in? And the answer is, of course, yes. But I also went in as a teenager,
right? And
I came out in my late 30s. So absent combat, I'm still going to be a different person.
Well,
but I know it had an impact on my life. I do notice
clearly
differences in myself, and I actually will take the feedback from people who have known me during that time period more than my own self-assessment, because I think we're really good at lying to ourselves.
Probably. And in my case, I was 20 years old when I went in. So even there, I was an immature 20 years old. And so when I went in, I came out as a better man. So I felt like I raised my platform for my internal self-appraisal. I had been with the best unit in that war, and I used that as a self-assurance factor. And there were many times we had shit that was going wrong at the student newspaper or later in professional life, going through divorce, whatever. No matter how bad it was, nobody's firing AK-47s or RPGs at us.
Yes.
That's what my dad says often. He uses slightly more colorful language, which I'll leave out for the purpose of this podcast. But
indeed.
So true, though, right?
And, we never had anybody putting Willie Peter in front of a claymore just to make it more effective.
I had not thought of doing that.
We did that a few times.
I regret not having experimented with that.
It can light up the enemy for you as you're getting pulled out on ropes. We did that once. But but for me, that was the bottom line. It was like the pride, and of course the country at that time was so crazy. And you got that idiot John Kerry, who was just a lying scumbag, and that has such an impact. To this day, we're still suffering from his lies.
Yeah.
And so personally, I just took pride in what I'd done, like typical SF guy, which is to be my examples, or Spider Parks and the men I served with, who I judge every man I meet. You all, I judge you compared to my guys. Pat Watkins, Spider Parks, and John McGovern, Lynn Black. You kidding? Doug, the Frenchman. Those are our guys we went to war with. And so I always had that factor there. And the family, mom and dad just support us down no matter what. And during those early years, just going to college was like a real rat race between college, not doing very well. It's got enough to get the degree at least. And then working, driving school buses and doing a POW-MIA thing, because that was a conscience drive, a hard issue. Glenn Lane, Robert Owen are still MIA to this day. We tried to do the best we could with the limited resources at that time to get public attention to it. And that's still going on today.
Yeah.
Did you keep in contact with a lot of the guys from the unit, or did you just lose contact because obviously everybody's doing their thing?
There were a few guys. Lynn and I were in contact for a while, the Frenchman, and then Eldon Bargewell would write occasionally because we were really close. And then as time went on, that disappeared, and there's like a void. Because, again, I was married, a family, wanted to be a good dad, just blessed with amazing girls who, by the way, my second daughter gave me my second grandson today.
What?
Yes.
Good timing. How did you arrange that, Andy? That's
Andy,
weird.
It's practice. Really just practice.
They
kind of
told
lining
us
stuff
these
up.
Navy officers. But anyways, my daughter came through with this beautiful grandson, and 7 pounds, 19 ounces.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Anyway, yeah, he's back there. He's shining. So just try to do that mission, get to work. And then we got working on the books. And then Spider Parks told me about the Special Operations Association. And this was 1983. I'm still in Trenton. Didn't do anything much. I just became a member. And then we moved to California. That's only 300 miles from Vegas, where we had the reunions. So finally, for a couple of years, me and Jeff Junkins, we were together. And we used to drive to Vegas, get there in the morning, hang out, wait till security guards left, sneak in, fake a badge, so we didn't have to pay admission or anything, get the free food, crash with one of the guys in this hotel room that night, and then drive home.
What?
And we get to see the guys,
Would you ever go back? Because so when I just saw this yesterday. When I went to E7 school, which is ANOC. It was called ANOC.
Okay.
And real young E7, and I got the leadership award. And when you get the leadership award, they gave me a book, a MACV-SOG book. I was trying to think of the author who wrote it. It was a Medal of Honor recipient, and and it's a black book with a MACV-SOG.
WTF?
Is that what what's it called?
Whiskey Foxtrot?
No, it's something on leadership.
Oh.
Anyways,
Medal
of Honor.
I don't know anything about leadership.
Yeah. Medal of Honor recipient, MACV-SOG guy. They give you that book, and they give you an SF Association lifetime membership, right? And so I have that in an envelope that I never opened inside the book. And when you told me I was doing this podcast, I started picking up all my MACV-SOG books, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, oh yeah, whatever.
Unopened invitation.
Yeah, I would never. So I would never go to that, but I feel like there's a period of time where you just lose everybody.
Yeah.
Like everybody, you walk away, you kind of find yourself, and then at some point, you kind of come back and gravitate towards the community. For you guys, it's maybe the Navy SEAL Foundation or maybe a local chapter.
Or an organization, but I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you have to find yourself first and then come back to it.
Yeah.
I think the people that struggle the most, and this is just completely my opinion, are the ones that don't take the time to find themselves, and they just define themselves by what they used to do.
Yes. I don't think I'm ready for it. I even thought about entertained, because the Green Beret Association or the Green Beret Foundation, like the Navy SEAL Foundation is incredible. Like the things they do. It's very big scale, and they're helping and impact because of that scale.
Yeah.
Green Beret Foundation, I've seen them fail a phone call. I've seen them fail like a thank you for a $25,000 donation. I've linked that up and went, hey, let's do, and then they didn't even send a thank you. Not even like, hey, thanks for your $25,000.
Which is a guarantee you're not going to get another $25,000.
Exactly. So
sad but true.
So I look at myself, and I go, well, if I'm going to do that, I'll just do it myself because I feel like I could do that right. But even I wouldn't do that like right now because I'm not ready. And I don't know what that is. And he even said in 83, this is 83, so this is way post-war,
and
which
remember,
we're still in.
There's two. There's a Special Operations Association formed by SOG.
Oh.
And SOG was formed because there was a Special Forces Association that was formed by the A-Team guys.
Yes.
And so in the very dark days, right during Vietnam War, they were recruiting, wanting SF guys to go in. So I joined, but they didn't pay much attention to SOG and to young guys. They had the career SF guys that had been in the decaders, they'd been 10, 15 years. No, I was only in for 3.5 years, 19 months in country, running missions that a lot of A-Camp guys didn't want to run.
Yeah.
So we had the SOA, and that's the one that's the Special Operations, and we're recruiting today. Otherwise, if they don't improve the recruiting, it'll be like the Doolittle Raiders. They'll be down to the last man standing, and he gets the bottle of scotch, gets drunk, and goes home.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Are you personally going to get involved in that?
I am not part of any association. I've never been to a single SEAL reunion. They do a West Coast and East Coast one. COVID obviously changed some of that. I've never been to one. I don't have an interest yet to go. I need to figure out my own path a little bit more, I think, before
It's hard to find your own men. If you can have a guarantee to see the guys you serve with, wouldn't that make it more compelling?
So I got invited to a Tomb Guard reunion. I was a guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier when I was 18. And
get out.
Yeah, it was a crazy thing. I don't even know how it happened.
I'll send you pictures.
Yes, I was real weird, real skinny.
You and Spitshined, huh?
I was.
Whoa.
But I'd never want to do any of that. And just recently, a buddy of mine, Austin, he was actually one of my new guys at the Tomb. I trained him as a young E3, and he asked me, he said, "Hey, this is like the 80th anniversary."
Whoa.
He said, "Hey, come to the 80th anniversary, and it's the last time you could wear your uniform because you could wear your uniform in it." And the Army finally went back to like a squared away uniform, like the World War II era uniform. I forget the name of it, but away from the blues. And then I was like, well, man, my family's never seen me in uniform. I never had a reason to be in uniform, but maybe I'll just do it just for that, for my family, so I can hang that up and give it to my kids one day. And I expressed an interest, and he signed me up for it in November. I still haven't committed personally, but I'm like, but I'm like, there's a greater cause, which is the family, right? But it's also connecting with those guys that I really had an affinity for, because there's a lot of SF guys that I just don't like, man.
Same in my community, and I'm sure there's plenty in my community that don't like me either.
Exactly. So. Yeah, and I think that's what it is inner community. There was a lot of rivalry and a lot of we like to eat our own. And then,
have these own A-type men that are running around. It's bound to happen. It's just sad, but so true. Yeah,
but I like the reconnection idea, stepping away after the transition and being a civilian and going, how can we interoperate to help each other advance our businesses, our lives, our families, whatever it means moving forward? That's huge to me.
And then you get to the history. You got to get the history from your era.
Yeah.
And if for no other reason, you do it for your children.
Yeah. That's what I've been telling him, right? Because he's like, I'll never write a book. And I'm like, look, your responsibility is impacting not only the lives of people, young people who aspire to be you, but also that legacy that you leave behind in archives for your family or for generations to come. And you know, we don't think our stories are extraordinary, especially when compared to a man like you, but it's a story. And that experience in some context is going to help some kid go, man, I want to be a Navy SEAL. I don't know why you'd ever want to be a Navy SEAL over Green Beret.
But
you know. Chiseled features, rugged handsomeness, above average hair.
Yes.
I mean, do you need me to keep going?
The best comb in town.
Yes, it's true. It's so true.
You might forget the gun, but never forget the comb and mirror.
That's true. That's
no,
true.
I'm only kidding.
How can you forget? It's got a pocket on your belt for it. That's first line gear, gentlemen.
EDC.
That's first line gear. Pistol, magazine, comb,
That's
mirror.
his new product line, first line gear.
But see, and here's we are.
I move like the wind in first line gear.
And like today's podcast, these are the kind of things that reach the younger people because I too, like your story about you when you were 12 years old, looking at or reading a SOG something or another, whatever it was, and Plaster's books.
Yeah.
He's the godfather of SOG writers.
Yeah.
And then we have the SEAL side of it. Everybody's story is different. And I think that if you do think about it, you should think about it from the approach of your story, not the I so much, but how I got involved and then the people you deal with along the way. I mean, my God, not many people get shot with an AK at what, 10.5 feet, was it?
Yeah, somewhere between 10 to 15 feet. Most people are better soldiers than me, so they would have not fucking been standing where I was.
Yeah, enemy marksmanship badge.
Seriously,
Good job
I'll
for
take
getting that.
one over here. Enemy marksmanship on aisle 1. Here we are. Can you see me? Am I in enough light right now? Thanks.
Yeah.
Bang.
So, but that story and the way you've bounced back, I mean, those are the kind of things that inspire our youth. There are people out there, and this new medium, what we're dealing with today, podcasts, and Jocko and a couple other people that do podcasts, it has an impact. I've seen it. Now, since the first podcast I did with Jocko, that's when I've seen the outreach from literally around the world.
Yeah.
From Australia, New Zealand, Poland, a couple dudes from Russia. Say, I'm here, but, I like your stuff. Okay, fine. But that's the way, and there are people from SF. In fact, January, I went down for an SF graduation. And our SFA chapter 78, we paid for the barbecue before the graduation. I had breakfast with a young man who read across the fence. He wanted to go to SF. And he was down there in between. He had gone through the assessment, was waiting for the first day to start SF training. We had breakfast together.
Oh, that's really cool.
And there's many examples like that. So in your case, and you're going to write a book too, you said?
Mike's going to write a book. I'll answer for him. Fuck yes, he is.
It's
He's writing it right now.
It's unprepared.
But see, when you do these
by
things,
Mike Glover.
You won't. Yeah.
Oh man!
But you don't know who will impact, and I don't know. I mean, Instagram every day. I'll get at least one note from somebody who's been impacted by the podcast, and then someone will be kind enough to say, "Hey, I saw you on Jocko," and "Oh yeah, I read your book too." But either way, that's. You're talking about the future, and hopefully we can there are young people out there that respond.
Yeah. How did they wind down MACV-SOG?
Like everything else, clandestinely, because they had to shut it down officially, but then they stayed in there. There was the acronym I never remember, but they had to wear black hats for a while.
So they changed the name probably.
Of course.
Changed the
name.
uniform, kept the same mission.
Right. And then by that time, several of the guys were all carrying sawed-off RPDs and multiple rounds, magazines, just going in super heavy. And Nick Brockhouse's book, We Few, just goes into some more detail about that. Just an incredible book. His time on the ground he got there in 1970, 71.
Right at the tail end.
Oh, yeah. And but again, they were able to get in sometimes, and oftentimes they didn't. And when they did, they made contact.
Yeah,
but again, it's the guys on the ground working well with TAC Air. I mean, like you guys talk today, you have your Air Force ATAC. I can't imagine that. To me, it's like I'm controlling the airstrikes, and, it makes me hinky when somebody else is directing air.
Yeah, because you guys use Covey, like FAC controllers.
FAC A's, basically.
FAC A's, yeah.
Well, we had, the code name was Covey for our fax, but the secret was had an Air Force pilot and a Green Beret in the right seat.
That's crazy.
And that guy had been on the ground. Yeah. There's no rookies here. The Covey riders were the men who've been there so they could talk to you. And John Plaster, there's at least one tape out where they recorded John talking some young radio operator down. The guy was freaking out on the radio. And John said, "You better settle down." I forget what his wording was, but he said, "Settle down or you're going to die. Now, trust me. Do this, do this, do that." The kid did.
Boss.
He got the fucking team out.
That's so awesome.
That's John Plaster. And John had been on the ground.
Yeah.
He ran missions, many. And I think John had 3 tours of duty.
Did you ever meet Bob Howard?
Talked to Bob on the phone once.
Yeah.
But remember, Bob was put in for 3 medals of honor.
Yeah.
And He was put
Did
in
he
for,
at least get one of them?
He did.
He got one finally.
Yeah, he was. And again, he earned the award as a sergeant. He was an S4 at the time, and I don't think he was ever assigned to a recon team. But he always went out and strap hanging to help other teams in trouble. The worst missions he went on would be bright lights.
Yeah.
And he was put in for 11 Purple Hearts. He only got 8.
Yeah. Got commissioned as an officer too.
Yeah. Now here you go. He earned the Medal of Honor as a sergeant.
Yeah.
But then he gets promoted. So the day he gets awarded the Medal of Honor, he's an officer.
Yeah.
Sir.
I mean, that's the way it should be, a natural. Obviously.
Should get an MOH for everything.
Yeah.
Of course.
I'm stuck on this Covey, pilot left seat, Green Beret right seat. I want to see him switch one day.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, dude, it's Thursday. You want to swap seats?
You want to get on the ground?
You talk me through flying this thing, and I'll talk you through talking on the radio.
Well, see, even there, they cross-trained our people.
So to fly in case something happened to them?
In case the pilot gets shot, they wanted the Green Beret to be able to land it, and they did so a few times.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that going on. I was one of the first snipers to go. They forced me to go to JTAC school, which was called Special Operations Terminal Air Controller School.
Yeah, something like that.
And so we were cross-training SF Green Berets. So if I was I know I was one of the first SIF guys to go because I was the only one in third group that was JTAC qualified because we had to do a requals. I was the only guy who showed up. But it really was one of the hardest things I've ever gone through.
It's a tough course.
Technically, it was super difficult, and you're talking Lat Long, which is a different language than MGRS. I could speak MGRS, but Lat Long is completely different. And then the engagement of you and the bird is so important because that's your lifeline.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so, and each bird varies depending on who you're talking to and what service they belong to. But it was incredible to hear, like, even in SOG with John Plaster, all of the communication and all the stories they have are all bird and pilot related, but you never got to see those guys after the fact.
Never.
They flew away into the horizon and you never saw them.
No, and that's what the great thing about the SOA. My last year as president, we brought in the SPAD pilots, the A1. Oh my God, the stories.
Really?
Because the classic is one where the team is in a world of shit, and the one just says bring it in close. He does a gun run. He said no, bring it in closer. He comes in, and his and he was the wingman. So the squadron leader said, don't do it. And he went in anyway and did what the ground commander asked for. And when he did it, the way he explained it was he did the gun run or a napalm run so close that when he pulled out, there was radio silence. He goes, fuck. Did I hit the team?
He smoked him, yeah.
And he said it was the longest seconds of his life.
Wow.
But then he came back and said, thank you, do it again.
Wow.
Now he got his ass chewed out for not listening to his squadron leader.
Yeah.
But the man on the ground he saved.
Do you have any regrets looking back on your career in SOG and kind of all the things that you transitioned into in your civilian life?
Whoa. I got to think about that one for you. Can you ask me another 15, 20 minutes? Give me a little time to think about it.
That's a good one, though.
Oh, yeah.
So here's a question, if you want some time to think, because I got a question for you, Mike. In the modern
We
era,
still haven't heard about Pakistan.
Oh, that's true, yeah. So in the modern era, do they teach the modern Green Berets in the pipeline about SOG? Do they have their place, their legacy, and their history? I mean, basically they need a fucking shrine built to them, which in Army speak is probably a building dedicated to them. But is it taught the way that you think it should be?
Yeah, so it's interesting when you go through Special Warfare Center now, or when I went through in 2002, I went to selection during the invasion of Afghanistan, and I went through the Q course during the invasion of Iraq. So everything we were learning was from Vietnam. All of our instructors were not Vietnam-era guys, but they were taught. They were in that lull period in the 80s. And so a lot of the doctrine that we had in hand For example, the book on fire bases, which I still have, which supposedly you could sell for $1,000 on eBay. I've been making copies in my basement.
Of course.
But
we'll be launching that in the store
the entrepreneur.
in 3 weeks.
And he's private labeled them, so it's just his cover on it. It's those documents and that doctrine is all Vietnam era. In fact, the Firebase book, which is fascinating, is all from handwritten accounts from guys in fire bases in Vietnam or SOG guys. That's what we were told. And if you look at it, everything from the punji stick, like how to counter an attack or an ambush, how to build a fire base and the perimeters of security, how to set up a patrol base in a recon operation, we were told were all based on a lot of ODA tactics in Vietnam, even doctrinally and even with the literal hands.
Yeah, that'd be more A camp than SOG.
Yeah, for sure. And then when I've noticed, like even in the SWCC, the Special Warfare Center halls, even in the leadership, we have a lot of the people who talk to us during our graduations in leadership schools, and a lot of the things that are taught to us culturally are all SOG related. There's some A camp stuff related, but most of it's SOG related. So SOG is like the tier 1 tip of the spear culturally for building Green Berets and Robin Sage, and small unit tactics and all of the things that we've done. And it's even there in the branding. I mean, I remember instructors having MACV-SOG, books, T-shirts, hats. All my first ODA in Afghanistan, we all made the MACV-SOG patch and would wear that on our ball caps with Velcro. Because it was just like reliving. I mean, we would have recon teams that were named instead of states. They were just named after guys that were killed in combat. Like,
right.
We have recon team Bittner, and we go out and conduct operations named after Ben. But it's part of our culture for sure. 100% it is.
Well, we've had third group guys that were in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
They started wearing SOG recon team patches.
Yeah.
And they called
Stolen
them,
Valor.
Yeah. Oh no, this is third group.
I'm totally joking.
Yeah. I was in third group for a period of time. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and the one guy I still talk to him today. He's now a warrant on his ODA, and he said, "Send me. Do you have a patch?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll send you a patch, but you got to get it dirty." And he did.
Really.
And he had the team, so we had pictures. We did a couple things for our local newsletter and then for the drop.
Yeah.
On those guys wearing, that was just so cool. They called them their shield.
Yeah, my team sergeant, who he was killed, but my team sergeant, his dad, I don't know his first name, but his last name was Booth, was on RT Maine, I believe RT Maine.
Yeah, out of Pontoon.
Yeah, he was RT Maine, and his granddad was an OSS guy, and he has the lineage OSS. MACV-SOG, and he was a Green Beret and was killed. It was crazy, man. His son right now is in the Army right now.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, his son's in the Army. It's crazy.
What a legacy.
Crazy, man. Crazy.
So look, before we shut down, you talked about Pakistan. I'm dying to hear about.
Well, I didn't do anything cool.
Only tell us the classified things.
Yeah.
Well, I did. So all of my career, I wanted to be a ground branch guy. My entire career was like paramilitary operations.
Right.
That's what I want to do. Like I wanted to be. I interviewed the Special Activities Division Chief.
Want to be just like Evan Haffer.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that.
But taller.
But
obviously.
taller, more handsome, more ripped and chiseled.
More suave and deboner.
Yes. Evan's don't remove my stuff from BRCC, please, Evan, if you hear that. So
just return my phone call, Evan, please.
I always wanted to be, since Mike Spann was killed early on in the GWAT.
Sure.
I got the opportunity to interview his boss, who's the Special Activities Division Chief on 9/11. This is months ago, but since that time period, I wanted to be in the CIA.
Sure.
So I knew course, curriculum, and career field. I knew exactly what I needed to do to achieve that as a PMO, a paramilitary operations officer.
Yeah.
And so I went through everything. The only thing I was missing was my degree. I got my college degree as a team sergeant, like nickel and diamond online courses.
No kidding.
Yeah, like it was very difficult to do.
You're college educated?
15 years of I don't know if I'm educated, but
he majors in mathematics.
on abacus. I specialize in abacus, major in abacus. So I got my degree.
Yeah.
And then I transitioned, and one of the duty stations that I had with the agency was Pakistan, and I had a transitional phase where the sequester happened when I went to get hired as a staffer for the CIA, and they put a stop loss, or not a hiring freeze on all positions for the CIA.
Isn't that mostly just a tax classification, though?
It is, but they said they couldn't hire.
Yeah.
So like they wouldn't allow me to go. They wouldn't allow me to, or anybody to go through a process to in process, even though I had basically been recruited. I was recruited in Libya. I was ready to go, and
so they'll pay you via 1099 opposed to W-2.
Yes. So they
Is
wanted
that right?
Basically.
Well, they made me a contractor, and I did GRS work as a contractor, and then realized in some of these countries, including Yemen, Pakistan, Libya, the politics that are all involved at the agency, especially because the agency is so close to the government, right? So, I mean, policy drives intel collection, which drives operations, or intel priorities, which drives operations. So being on the operational side my whole life, I'm like, well, I want to be on the intel collection and warfighting side of the agency, and realized it's even closer to the flagpole. And the difficulties I was having in Libya operationally were compounded and more profound in being a CIA guy, and realized I wanted to step away. And in fact, when Pakistan, I think I told you this, Andy, my partner, my riding partner in the agency was Ryan Owen's brother, who was killed. He was a dev guy and was killed on a hostage rescue in Africa. But after all that stuff transpired, I'm like, dude, I want to have like a life, because in committing to being a paramilitary operations officer, many of my friends are chiefs in divisions of the Central Intelligence Agency, and their entire life is that, and I love them for it. Thank God there's men like that who have committed their lives. But I felt at that time period, which was at this point 22 years into it, I've given enough. I walked away as a sergeant major in special operations and special forces, and had the CIA job, and was like, I'm done. And I actually decided that in Pakistan.
No kidding.
Yeah, in Pakistan, Pakistan is like, if you could take the Team America movie, and then the bullshit stereotypical theme of the guys running around and with the big beards, that to me was Pakistan, especially
so
Peshawar.
Team America combined with Tropic Thunder.
With Tropic Thunder, every stereotype, I was like, this place is crazy.
No.
But I actually enjoyed. I was in Peshawar, but I enjoyed Pakistan. But I had a whole myriad of experiences there.
So, what kind of a mission would you run in Pakistan?
A whole bunch of different stuff. I mean,
can you talk about any? Just one to tease us a little bit.
Nah, it's nothing. It's nothing sexy.
I don't care, but you did it. I didn't.
So the world, that world which exists between Afghanistan and Pakistan, that world exposed me to like. Me going like in shock, going, there's this thing that exists.
Talking about Waziristan?
Like politics.
No, like technical capability.
Oh, got you.
Yeah, like technical capability, going, oh shit. Like I thought I was exposed on the Army side, on the green side,
right,
that there was all this world, got in the agency world and went, holy fuck, man, like this is crazy. But all of that said, in Pakistan, that's where I decided to hang it up. We had a fucking, I've been in 2 earthquakes in my life. One in Afghanistan in 2005, which was a major earthquake that killed thousands of people from Pakistan that originated. And the second one in 2015 in Pakistan, 10 years later, which was another record breaker that killed thousands of people in Pakistan. And I was like, it wasn't because of that earthquake, but I was like, I'm fucking done.
But it can still shake you up a little bit.
It does. Like, yeah. I was tired of living in shipping containers and babysitting fucking case officers. That was the bottom line. Like,
it's fair.
Yeah. I'm a master at babysitting case officers.
So you have successfully avoided answering my question, which is, Tell me one little mission, Mike.
I did go back and get a brick from Abbottabad, from your boys, from the Bin Laden hit.
Ooh.
Yeah, but I failed to get it into my bag before I left country. I had the brick from Osama bin Laden's compound and was like, fuck yeah. And then I left it on the bookshelf as a book. What is it? The
bookend?
A bookend.
God damn it.
And it's
Mike.
probably sitting there because somebody's like, who the hell would use a brick for a book?
Or they hucked it and they're like, this piece of shit.
So for the third time, what one little mission you did?
He can't tell you.
I can't.
You can't?
Just
say I can't.
I'm in the 20.
Then you're cool.
Well, I'm in the 20-year window.
You're in the okay.
Yeah,
now we're
I'm in the
now we're
20-year
covered. Okay,
window.
good. Now I feel better. But
I'm,
you see, we
I'm
tried.
5 years in the 20-year window.
There you go.
But nothing. But to be honest, nothing as sexy as SOG.
Well, I don't know about sexy, but anyways,
Nothing
you
is-
guys did it though. See, that's the
nothing
next
is epic.
generation. That's why you got to get those stories down.
Yeah.
Write them when you're fresh.
I here's what I propose.
Oh, he's writing.
Here's what I propose: that I do the voice for your Audible for your book.
Only
So
if I
he's
can do
gonna
the
write-
voice for yours.
Oh.
He's gonna okay.
You can be the voice for my book. You got a
Of
better
course,
voice than I've got.
I'll do it. I'll
He
do
has
it.
a voice for radio for sure, and a face
Oh,
for
yeah.
radio. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Of course, of course.
I got the
a
best
body
face for radio.
No, oh man, this has been an awesome experience.
Yep.
Like-
One hanging question though. Biggest regret.
One
Any
hanging
regrets?
Chad.
Oh yeah, the regrets question. The biggest regret.
Oh,
If there are any.
There's got to be one. There's one.
well, I mean, the regret was just the way I left suddenly, because I really at that point I had extended my enlistment to go back, and the paperwork had been put in for direct commission, which I didn't care much about, but it's just like, okay, if I'm going to go on with the career here, and the way life worked out for me, that it's just funny how life unfolds.
Yeah.
So I regret leaving them. And on April 30th, I regret that I wasn't in a position where I could go back and get my people.
Yeah.
The guys that saved my ass so many times. Both the Vietnamese on my team and those King Bee pilots. I mean, some of the stories, again, Jocko podcast with Cowboy.
Oh, they're crazy. I've listened to them.
Which is 258 or 247, which is Cowboy. No, 258 was Cowboy. He was on with Alabama. And he was in country for 16 years before he got out. Incarcerated, re-educated.
Yeah.
And then Captain On, who was the King Bee pilot, who lost both hands after a King Bee crash.
Wow.
And the reason why he lost his hands, when he got shot up, the fuel tank got ruptured. There's fire in the cockpit. He could have landed right away and saved himself and his crew. But he would have landed with the communists. He would have become an instant POW. He flew over one mountain and landed.
Wow.
Where he was safe and lost his hands.
Yeah.
Well,
He still has hooks today.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And he still smokes a pack of cigarettes every day with his hook.
Wow.
If you have two hooks for hands, you can smoke as much as you fucking want.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes. He's the guy I was telling you about that did that one rescue mission where nobody would go.
Right.
And he went. He's like, I'll go.
Yeah, and he also, we had a night mission where a hatchet force had been extracted under heavy gunfire. The last helicopter out with the team leader on it gets shot down, crashes. The team leader gets a broken back, and Captain On flew Lynn Black and Idaho in at night by himself to an LZ. And then Lynn was able to get in, and they had a medic with him, Williams, who was strap hanging, and he could move in the jungle at night. And they got to the 1-0, the team leader, Dave Gordon, got him out, and On came back for him and pulled him out at night.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
I'm assuming he didn't have night vision goggles or anything.
Well, you know what he said?
What?
He told Jocko. He said, Jocko asked me, how can you fly at night? He says, I've flown in Vietnam for so long. I know the terrain. I know Laos. Bum, 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 bum.
Wow. So he could fly it blind, basically.
Oh yeah, because you know what the South Vietnamese did. They took a lot of the radio equipment out. The only radios they left in was the ones they talked directly to Covey and to their base, I guess.
Yeah.
Because how do we know that? In our clubhouse, in FOB1, the Marines would come in, and the King Bee pilots would come in. Of course, the Marines are always kind of like, hey, you guys, you know. So one day they said, When we're in Da Nang, we'll race you to FOB1, and we're going to beat you. And the Marines go, no, you can't. They go, yeah, we will. And so what the Vietnamese didn't tell the Marines was they had taken all that extra weight out. So they flew directly from Vietnam, Da Nang, over the High Van Pass, straight to FOB1. The Marines had to go around it because they couldn't get the elevation.
Oh, wow.
And they beat them. And then they also said, we can back up the King Bean. And the Marines go, that's not in the NATOPS. There's nothing there about backing up an H-34. And they go, bet you $100. And they won.
Of course.
Mucho. Oh, yeah.
Good God.
That's amazing, man.
Our King Bee pops, that's why I'm here. So the regret is, that's the biggest regret, that A, not to do more to get them back. And between the team and the King Bees.
Okay.
Mike, we got to get you to the airport.
How long have we been podcasting for?
Close to 3 hours.
Couple of minutes.
3 hours? Okay.
No, serious?
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew this was going to be a long one. I'm gled you pushed it left for my timeline.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Thanks for doing
Got
that.
time
Generally,
for Chick-fil-A on the way out or what?
Oh, I'll probably crush it on the way.
You used to making accommodations for the green side of the house. It's no big deal.
It's true. It's true.
John, thank you for sharing so openly with your experiences. It's unbelievable. And thank you for everything that you did in Vietnam.
Thank you.
It absolutely, it's hard to describe how, I'm at a loss for words for how impactful and how unbelievable it is to me that the things that you guys were doing. It's a order of magnitude greater than anything I was ever exposed to in my military career.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it's my honor because, see, as I'm looking at it from my perspective, for you, what Jocko's doing with the podcasting, you gents are doing the next mission, which is to get our stories out. And your stories, sir, when you can talk about them. But that's really important. Yeah. That's our history, and that's where the future will come from. There are young people that listen to that. They are listening, and there'll be more, particularly as our education system continues to fail, at least in pubic schools.
Yeah. Mike, closing thoughts.
No, I just, it's been an honor. Andy, thank you for inviting me onto this, and thank you for sharing your experiences today. I think it feels very full circle to me. Like there's a lot of things that me and Andy have talked about on the podcast that I talk about on my podcast and build in my business and company, that having this experience here with your generation of warriors that fought in SOG and Vietnam, where it feels like right. Like it gives me I hate to say it this way, but it gives me the affirmation and the validation I need to feel good about moving forward with my mission, with our missions of continuing to tell your stories without feeling this burden of whatever it is, right? Because, quiet professionals has always been our motto in special operations. But there's something to be said about after you do that, and like Andy said, sharing experiences without sharing TTPs that are so important in life now because of the failed, broken systems and family unit, and the list goes on, that we need to inspire our next generation. And you inspired me without you even knowing it. Wow. The band of brothers that you served with in MACV-SOG inspired me, and all the warriors that I fought with, all of them were inspired by MACV-SOG. Even the SEALs that I served with knew about SOG and their missions, and all the men who fought in Vietnam. And without you guys doing it and leading the way, I don't think I would have got off my ass and did anything about it.
Well, let me add this then. From your story, which I saw the first interview with Andy, that took courage. Your story talked about what you've been through during the wars and afterwards, finding yourself. That takes real courage, and I think that's more inspirational than anything. And that, I really salute that personally, on a personal level, and I think that shows the Spec Ops esprit de corps itself, for you to bounce back like that.
No, I appreciate
and to be today, and Andy, for you to bounce back, I'd still be feeling sorry for myself in a padded cell somewhere if I took that AK round.
That's what I do on Fridays.
Okay, well, you do.
He's still in that.
But that's my salute to you. I think from one generation to the next, and even today, that's why I really enjoy going back to the graduations to meet the new SF men.
Yeah.
And to meet each different generation. And I've read some of these books about your wars, and whew, you guys did it. You carried on. You took our tradition and moved forward and made it better.
Hell yeah, gentlemen.
Amen.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you again to 10,000 for supporting this episode of the podcast. 10,000 is a direct-to-consumer company, no middleman, so you get premium fabrics, trims, and techniques that other brands, they simply can't afford. Get 15% off of your first purchase when you go to 10,000.cc, not .com, .cc, and enter the code CLEAREDHOT. Thank you again to Babbel for supporting this episode. Right now, when you purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription, you'll get an additional 3 months for free. That is 6 total months for the price of 3. Just go to Babbel.com and use the promo code CLEAREDHOT. That is BABBEL.com, code CLEAREDHOT for an extra 3 months free.
On the west bank of the river. That's A-firm, west bank. It gives me hell. Still give it to me in the grove. Okay, one's in from the north. I've got the west bank of the river. Two's going to give it to you in the grove. Roger, give me that gun run. Right along that bag, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to tune in, whether you're listening on an audio-only platform or you're watching on YouTube. I appreciate that you take the time every week to tune in. People ask me a lot, what can they do to help me spread the word? And the answer is actually embedded in the question. The biggest thing you guys can do to help me, if you enjoy the podcast and you think it would be helpful to others, is subscribe and share it with other people. And if you have the time, go on to Apple Podcasts and leave me a rating and a review. If you think the podcast sucks, tell me it sucks and leave a 0-star review or the lowest stars possible. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion, you can go to clearedhotpodcast.com. And there is a contact me button right there, which will land in my inbox. And the last thing, if people are interested in helping out, what you can do is fly the old flag. And by that, I don't mean an actual flag, because I don't have any of those. I'm talking about t-shirts or sweatshirts or hats, whatever it may be. Again, clearedhotpodcast.com. Click on the shop tab, and hopefully something in there looks like it would be an item you would like to wear around town. And then you can tell people what it is when they ask you. But that is it. The biggest thing I can say is thank you. I truly appreciate it. And until next time, see you.